Sleepy town settled for the night, where every lawn is tailored just right. And it's about time that the back porch light comes on. At that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street. Anyway.
Hey, Witch, hey.
Hey, Witch, hey. I'm Justina.
I'm Christina.
Welcome to Magnolia Street, your one and only musically inspired practical magic fandom podcast.
Every week we deep dive on different aspects of the movie and the books, as well as treat your ears to our very own practical magic inspired original music. Which, wait, before you get into your segment, I want to hear about your live performance with Crimson Calamity over the weekend.
Oh, all right. I was putting that a little further down after we do our little...
Okay.
Yeah. So snowballing off of our spooky topics from the last few weeks, right? We talked about the Magus, one of the most famous or infamous grimoires, the element of spirit itself, and aether and quintessence and all those little words we learned, as well as the dark goddess herself, Hecate. And this week we're talking about necromancy. I wore my Ouija board shirt today in honor of raising the dead.
I love that.
So right, I'm all about this topic. You were like, should we just do an ancestor veneration because we already started notes? I'm like, no, we're talking about raising the dead.
Okay. Yes.
Like, I need to talk about this. I've had this book, okay? This book, Calling the Spirits, A History of Séances by Lisa Morton, for the longest time. And I actually started reading this, like a year ago. I never finished the whole thing in its entirety. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So I'm like, I was kind of like torn. I'm like, what exactly to include for this episode? So that's why I'm kind of still like wading through it and picking little pieces out that I want to include. So there's a kind of magic that humankind has always feared and even desired. It's the art of crossing the boundary that divides the living from the dead. The whisper beneath the coffin lid, the voice that answers when no one should be speaking back. And in practical magic, Sally and Gillian Owens learned this lesson the hard way when a desperate resurrection spell brings Jimmy Angelo back. It kind of goes awry, right? But not as the man that he once was. Like the aunt said, he would come back as something dark and unnatural, and that he did. And what they summon isn't love restored, it's love distorted, right?
Very much.
Yet, even in the chaos, this scene reveals something ancient, our age-old refusal to just let go of our beloved loved ones, or maybe not beloved in their case, but are the ones that have passed on. You know?
Right. So today we're not just exploring the Owens family's brush with necromancy, we're following the shadow through history itself, from the ancient world where Greek and Egyptian sorcerers sought wisdom from the underworld,
to the medieval grimoires that warned against raising the dead, but taught how to bind them nonetheless.
To our favorite Victorian period spiritualist boom, where seances and spirit photography turn death into spectacle.
And then finally into the modern age, where necromancy has evolved, not in crypts or catacombs, but in our technology, our memories, and our stories.
Because necromancy isn't always about reviving bodies. Sometimes it's about resurrecting what we've lost. A voice, a moment, a love that refuses to fade. And nowhere is that tension more beautifully, dangerously alive than in the world of practical magic.
So grab your grimoire, light a candle for the ancestors, and join us as we open the door between the worlds. This is Magnolia Street, and today we're talking about necromancy.
Speaking of spirit photography, if you ever come down this way, if you're ever in Charlotte, check out the Sleepy Poet Antique Mall.
Ooh.
Holy shit. It's this huge warehouse we were walking for a while. We went yesterday, and every Victorian trinket, antique, everything you could freaking want is in this one building. And my dad picked up these photos. He's looking through old photos and he's showing them to me. I'm like, that's a dead baby. Like, he's showing me all these Victorian pictures and like...
Do they have daguerreotypes?
I don't know if they were technically daguerreotypes, but they were
Yeah.
definitely prints of deceased parties. It was the coolest place. What did I get? I found it a Pyrex thing with a lid.
Yeah.
But I scored that chair at another thrift store I sent you a picture of,
That
and
was
it's like
cool.
chef's kiss beautiful, like the
A beautiful
rattan.
chair.
Thank you, $20. I was like,
Oh
you're
my
coming up with me,
God.
baby.
See, like, down south, you guys got the good thrifting. Like in Jersey, that chair would still be like 50, 60, maybe even $100.
You got to check out the hospice
Good find.
resale places. You know,
Oh,
those old
what's
people got the
that?
goods,
I know.
got good stuff.
I know. I hit up Facebook Marketplace all the time. And, like I told you, my friend Sabrina comes over and evaluates all my, thrifted
Yeah, yeah,
pieces and
yeah.
tells me if they're haunted or not.
Yeah. You don't have a building, like a hospice resale building or anything?
I've
You have
never
to
even
look at
thought to like check that. I don't know.
check it
I
out.
know people have estate sales around here all the time.
Hmm.
Like often, like I usually see the signs as I'm driving on the way to work, and I'm like, I fucking can't stop now. It's like in the
Yeah.
middle of the day on a
Yeah.
weekday. Like it's like they're at the most inopportune times.
Yeah.
So like I'm never actually able to go to any of these estate sales. I just see them, I see the signs as I'm driving by, and I'm like, oh, well, I wish I would have known about that in
Yeah.
advance, you know?
I know. And the other thing
But
was I
it's cool.
introduced my mother to Christine McConnell's.
Oh yeah?
I showed her the gingerbread with Winchester Mystery
Uh-huh.
Mansion
Yeah.
gingerbread reconstruction, and she's like obsessed. She's like,
Oh my
I'm
God.
subscribed. I gotta look. I've never heard of this house before. I'm like, are you
Really?
kidding?
Wait, the Winchester House? Your mom's never heard of the Winchester House?
No, ma'am. I said, this is
Wow.
Seance Queen right here.
All
Yeah,
right.
amazing.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if we
She
talk about
just
her at all, but I would like to talk about her a little bit.
Sarah Winchester?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't she
Yeah.
like build she just kept building onto the house, right? She
Yes,
just kept
ma'am.
building and building and building and like I don't know what I don't remember what the purpose was. Like
So
she
yeah,
wanted to
she
accommodate her ghosts, you know?
she was the heiress to the Winchester repeating arms gun manufacturer. Okay, so she married the son who owned that. So her daughter died and then her husband died, and she thought she was being punished for
Oh,
all the lives that the gun took in like the American Indian Wars and stuff like that. So
uh,
through her like mediums and seances, they were like, just keep building to confuse the spirits. And
oh my God.
that's what she did. She
There
was
you go.
worth so much money.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's what she did her whole life.
Still got her estate out there in what, Southern California, right? I
Yeah,
think.
San Jose,
Yeah.
California.
Right. Oh, yeah. I'd
It's
love
so
to get
cool.
out there and go see that in
I
person, but it's
know.
so freaking cool. So, can you say the name of that flea market you guys went to again? The Dead Poets what?
The Sleepy Poet
Oh,
Antique Mall in Charlotte, North Carolina.
that name alone it's like gives you a little bit of like
Sleepy
that.
Poet.
Ooh, it's so spooky.
I know.
The Sleepy
I actually
Poet.
found it on TikTok. I was just scrolling and they were
That's
like, this is the place for the spooky holiday antiques. So I said, we're going there today. Cool.
Wait,
40
did you
minutes
see a
drive.
video like that was like, "Come with me when I go to sleep visit the
No, no,
Sleepy
thank God.
Poet
I
Flea
scroll right by
Market"?
those.
Me and Avi like we fucking hate those videos.
Get ready with me.
Yeah, some
Hmm.
influencer just posted one about Westfields,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Where I took you to go get the pizza because it's based on the Adams family house, right?
Right.
So right now in October they always have a Adams family festival and like they paint the actual main
Oh,
characters on all the windows and the stores and stuff. And so this one influencer did like a whole video about Adams, like
yeah.
come with me to Westfield, New Jersey. It's the home of the Adams family, and I'm just like they're gonna ruin it ruin it for the locals. Like what the
Right,
fuck?
right.
So
Harold's gonna have to go on duty overtime with that stop sign at the crosswalk.
Carol. Wait,
Carol.
did I call her Carol? What did I call
Yeah.
her? I
Yeah,
called
you
her
called her
Carol.
Carol. Carol!
Yeah, she's gonna have a lot of people to direct traffic.
Direct. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah, so today before we get into today's topic, yes, we're going to talk a little bit about my performance with Crimson Calamity, our friend Mallory's band. It was just so much fun. It was so much fun to meet her in person, her and
I can't
her
imagine.
and her bandmates Lauren. So talented, by the way. Like I was blown away. Their harmonies live are like better than the record.
Sharp.
On point.
Awesome.
On point. Like, and they like have this thing like they can just like glance at each other and know like what the other one's gonna do, and they kind of like play off each other, and
I
it
love
was
that.
they
That's
were
a relationship.
right. You
Yeah.
could tell that they've been at it for really like a while, long enough to hone their craft and their skill together.
I love that. I'm so
That's
jealous.
that's a lot of work, right? To
Yes.
be able to get to that point where you can just glance at them and know like what the next beat is gonna be.
Yes. That's
So
fantastic. I'm so jealous.
it's so professional. We wish you could have been there.
I know. I wish I could have too. I
I
hope you
know.
had some good tasty drinks. And I'm
I
so
had
happy that I got to.
I had one sour beer. That's all I had. And
Okay.
I had it after I played because, like, I'm getting over my cough. I didn't want to, like,
Yes.
chance anything before I had to sing. So I waited till after my set to do the whole, to have a little bit of beer. It was just like a little, like, sampler. Avi got a
Little
flight.
taster.
So yeah, so he
Yeah,
got a
yeah,
flight.
yeah.
But they also brew their own root beer and cream soda. So I had a nice big glass
Ooh.
of root beer, and Avi had the cream soda.
Root beer is so nostalgic. Makes you feel like a kid.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I was so happy to get to
So,
rewatch your whole set on our Instagram. You were like, it's up
yes.
there if you want to see it. I was like, we were playing Chinese checkers with my mom. And so I was
Oh,
not even paying attention. I was just like watching you the whole time. I'm like, I'm
oh.
so proud of you. It's
So
amazing.
did you see they played I got your text while they were playing because you were like, play Ghost. So I
I
ran
didn't
up
see
there and
that part yet.
I was like, hey, Christina said play Ghost. So they played it for you.
Oh,
So
I'm so happy. It's a
you go to
beautiful
Reels
song.
and fast forward, I think a little bit through the set, you'll hear them playing
Yeah.
for you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
I love that song.
It is a really beautiful song. I was listening to it yesterday again after I heard them play it at the show.
Yeah,
And it's perfect for spooky season.
it is.
Right? Yeah, it's very haunting. And their voices, oh my God, I can't get over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just very exciting to finally meet them and chit chat after the show a little bit. Me and Mallory realized we had some weird synchronicities. Like we have a couple different connections that I was not expecting. Okay.
Okay.
So I played this showcase out when I was in LA called, I think it was like King Ryan Events or something like that. It was like a major label showcase. Like a label executive was supposed to come and like, it's like 20 to 50 people that, play a few songs for this showcase. That's the showcase where I met Ron Jeremy. Okay.
Okay.
So just to give you the vibe of this kind of people that were at this show. Okay, so Mallory, she was like, I have to talk to you about King Ryan events. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, wait a minute.
I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, we both played that showcase. And I'm like, what? Well, she played in 2011. I played in 2009. So we didn't play the same exact night.
Got it.
But I was like, wait, did we play the same night? She's like, I don't think so. I think mine was a few years after yours. But I saw you post a picture a couple days ago when Taylor Swift's album dropped, The Life of a Showgirl. I posted some of my own throwback photos of like my own showgirl era when I was gigging a lot and out in LA. And one of the pictures I posted was from that King Ryan events. And she said that's where she saw that I played it. And she was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to talk to her about this.
How about that?
The show was very long. There were like a bajillion performers, and the odds of actually winning this thing were, kind of slim because there's so many people playing this thing. But she actually won.
Wow.
But she left. I guess she was like, oh, there's so many people playing this. There's no chance in hell I'm going to win. And she got an email, like, I guess the next day saying like, hey, where did you go, Cinderella? You won the the contest.
That's so funny. As she should have. Good for her. That's awesome.
Yeah, so she was showing me pictures from her event and I was showing her pictures from my event, and it was just so funny like seeing each other's old photos of like from like the early aughts, right? Like 2009, 2011 was such a time with fashion. I'm like, what are the chances of us playing the same exact thing? And she's like, did you get scammed? Did we play the same scam?
Yeah.
I mean, because like we had to sell our own tickets. I hate the pay to play thing, but when you're young and you just want to get in front of a crowd, and especially if there's the tagline pay for what's it called, label executives, like, yeah, we're gonna do it.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
we had to sell tickets, and that fucking sucked. And like I only knew like 5 people out in LA, so like literally I sold all my tickets to my family out here in Jersey. They just bought them to support, but like
couldn't even come and see the music.
that's how I had to make my ticket sales. But anyway, so then we had like another connection, which was really weird. So somebody said the name Kate, and then Lauren was like, oh, like Vogel? And I was like, oh, I've seen Kate Vogel. I saw her play in Savannah when my brother went to college there, and she played a show with the Veronicas. And Lauren went, oh, my friend dated one of the Veronicas. And me and Avi looked at each other and were like, is it Greg? Is it Greg Garbowski? Greg, our friend Greg from high school, He plays bass and has played bass for years for the Jonas Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's a connection between the Jonas Brothers and the Veronicas and I guess Mallory and Lauren.
Okay. So, but she knows Greg.
Yeah. Yes. They know Greg.
Wow.
Which is insane. So we're like, we're just both blown
this
away.
Music industry is like tight.
It's smaller than you think.
Yes.
It's smaller than you think.
Whoa.
So, isn't that wild? I'm like, okay, so I've technically already known Mallory and Lauren before we even met them through the podcast between King Ryan events and this synchronicity, like with our high school friend, and it's just like so fucking weird how small the world actually is.
You were meant to meet each other. Yeah.
It's so crazy. So yeah.
I'm stoked you had a good time, even though you were still fighting your sickness. You sounded great. I was so proud of you.
I'm still fighting it. I'm like trying to like breathe.
I was just watching you, like you did all the songs back to back, and I'm watching you sing, and my mom's there and Erin's there. I'm like, that's a lot of breath work, Kai, she's doing right now. That's a lot she's doing because she is sick. She's really doing a great job.
I appreciate you recognizing that because I was fighting for my life to not just like cough in the middle of any of the lines I was singing.
I
feel like I can't even talk without coughing right now. So the fact that I was able to sing an entire set, I don't know,
switched on the Sag.
Yeah, you just have to switch it on sometimes. The show must go on. I told Mallory, I was like, listen, I'm sick as a dog and I don't want to get you guys sick, but I still plan on singing with you guys. You can't roll through Jersey and then I'm like, no, I'm gonna sit this one out. Fuck nah. I have FOMO. Of course I'm gonna sing. I was like, Mom didn't raise no bitch. So, I'm gonna step up to the plate. And
you sure did.
Fun. Yeah. We hung out for a little bit after the show and then they made their way to New York and me and Avi just went home and just crashed on the couch. I took a hot shower when I got home because
I'm sure it felt great.
I was just had to like chill on my bones and it was just like damp and nasty out. I just took a hot shower, put on my cozy jammies, and then had some soup. And just
good way to end the day.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Nice Sunday.
Right. Oh yeah, Avi saved the day with as usual. So we're setting up and Mallory's trying to get my height for the microphone. She's like twisting the little doodad that tightens the stand and the whole top part of the stand snaps off.
Oh shit. Oh no.
It snapped off. She's like, what the fuck?
Oh no.
He's like, oh my god, is there a Guitar Center around here? Avi's like, yeah, there's one on 22, but it was like, a good 20-minute drive. And the show was starting soon. So he was able to like, rig it so he could like wrap some like gaffers or like painter's tape around it. And
Avi for the win.
Or yeah, I don't remember if he wrapped the tape around it or he was able to take part of the thread. It was probably like the size of like my ring. Like it was like, or maybe a little thicker than that. It was like that much of the thread that snapped off. But he was able to like get that out of there and then I guess I don't know. Yeah, readjust it and then I don't remember if he secured it with tape.
That's crazy.
He fixed the stand, he saved the day, he saved the show.
I'm so happy you got to meet.
Oh, and did I tell you the night before the show? So Mallory and Lauren roll into Jersey. We were supposed to meet up that night. We were supposed to go to like Westfield and have a drink out there or whatever. They ended up not getting in until like 9:00. I think they were in Delaware before that. So they drove from Delaware to Jersey. I think they got in around 9-10 o'clock. Went to their hotel to check in. They, have a reservation. The hotel, I think they booked it through Priceline.com or something. So just a warning to anybody who books through Priceline.com that this can happen. Hotels apparently will overbook. So they actually told them that they don't have a room. When they got in at 10:30, imagine how like tired they are from road tripping all day, and then they get in ready to crash for the night, and then the hotel being like, sorry, you don't have a room.
Yeah.
Like what? What actually the fuck?
Yeah.
So Mallory texted me and I'm like, you guys can crash here if like, whatever. And she's like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that to you. I feel bad, like, we've never actually met in person before and you're not feeling well, so let me figure out what we're gonna, what the hotel can do. So they actually ended up getting into a room. She said the lady at the desk was really, accommodating and really nice. So they didn't get into the room until like 11 o'clock though. But they did get the room nonetheless. So I'm glad it all worked out. But I'm like, if worst comes to worst, let me know. Like you guys can stay here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine that. That sucks.
Right.
Being as
Yeah.
tired as like you and I were the
Oh my
Boston
God.
trips and like then them having to say, sorry, you don't have a room here. I'd be like,
Right.
the fuck I don't. There are 300 rooms. You find me a room, right?
Right. Yeah. Especially if you had a reservation, if you like booked, I don't know how long
You
they booked
have
in
my
advance.
money.
But exactly. But besides the point, like, yeah, why even use a booking site if it's not even,
Accurate.
if, yeah. So that would have pissed me off.
Oh yeah.
I was like, is there at least a hotel bar you guys can like chill at? And she was
Yeah.
like, yeah. So I think they chilled at
Good.
the hotel bar for a minute before, they were able to crash. But
Well, if she does get 2026 Charlotte dates,
yeah.
maybe you guys can come down and
Yeah, I said next time you guys go on tour, you have to kidnap me.
yeah. Yeah.
Avi will be fine. He
Oh,
can babysit
oh
the
my God,
cats,
that would
and
be so
you
surreal.
guys just kidnap me, and we'll just go take it on the road, baby.
Awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
glad.
All right, we have some Spotify comments on a couple different episodes. We have one from Amanda LaRue. 07 on our episode 19 Goofs and Trivia, and Amanda says, I don't know if anyone will see this because I'm clearly starting way back in the podcast, but I always thought that Gary was wearing contacts to balance his eye colors, and then one falls out during their little makeout, and that's when she realizes. I honestly have no reason as to why I believe this. Now I have to go back and watch to see what made me think that.
Well, Amanda, we do see your comment, and I love that. That is a very clever thought. Like, yeah,
Right,
realistically, why not? Like, maybe he is self-conscious about his eye color, and then
right.
it pops
Huh.
right out.
I never thought of that. Yeah, because all right, I always just thought it was like magic that
Yeah,
like
a,
Sally
a trick of the
was
light.
kind of yeah, or I thought Sally was kind of oblivious to these traits that he had until they had that spark of a kiss, that connection, and then their faces were that close together. Obviously, they were making
Sure.
out.
Yeah.
So at that point, that's when the kind of like I don't know if the veil lifted and she was able to see that
Mm-hmm.
this was the guy. And maybe that's when she saw the heterochromia. She's like, oh, one green eye, one blue. That's the
Yeah.
part of my spell. So maybe that's why it started to make sense for her at that point, and that's why she actually saw it.
Yeah, and
That was always my theory.
everything before then, even though she couldn't lie to him, she was like she couldn't look him in the eye, you know? She was
Right.
afraid to be truthful and vulnerable, and then that was the moment she was both of those things, and then she directly saw his heterochromia. So, very
Right.
cool.
Yeah. And then we have another comment on the same episode, mind you, from a user named Avalon. And they say, just listening to this today, I only came across this podcast a couple of days ago, and hearing about Griffin Dunn's sister being killed sparked in my head something I'd heard just this morning. On a radio station, I heard one of the hosts talking about someone he'd have on later that morning, but I didn't hear who. That was from Hollywood and had a sister who had been murdered. It was Griffin Dunn appearing at the Brisbane, Australia Writers' Festival this weekend.
How about that?
Yeah.
Wow, what timing.
And then Avalon posted again on our WMSR session number 2.
No way.
I'm glad people actually listen to those
Yeah.
episodes,
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say, I had a high school friend who used to work at Johnny Rockets here, and whenever my sister and I went there, we put on Respect.
Your
So
Johnny
I
Rocket
really-
story.
yeah. And I don't know what is IIRC?
I don't know.
Either. Okay, so IIRC, our friend, said that he did enjoy getting out there and dancing to it.
If
Kinda
I
not
recall correctly.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you for that. Kind of not surprised with the sort of exhibitionist he was at school.
That's funny.
So I'm glad other people have experienced the Respect
With
breaking
Johnny
out
Rocket.
the song dance at Johnny Rockets. I was so sad recently. I went to the mall by my house where, they had the Johnny Rockets, like the one Johnny Rockets in, I don't know, a fucking 50-mile radius. Like, I don't know of any other Johnny Rockets around here, but the one in the mall just closed down. I went there and it was like all like
Oh.
bricked up, and I'm like, oh no.
Goodbye.
He was there for the longest time. So it was definitely, I felt like
Oh,
it was the
end of an era.
Exactly. Very sad to see that go. And even in the past like couple years or so, I don't even think that they were doing the Respect song anymore. I think they were just over it at that point.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
bummer.
so it kind of like died out, fizzled
Times
out.
are changing.
Yeah. Do you want to take us through some of our Instagram?
Sure. We
conversations?
had an Instagram comment from Bald Books Geek. Made a post titled Why Alice Hoffman Still Matters in the promotion of a YouTube video he posted by the same name. And in his Instagram post, he wrote, I'm going to say all the things, hashtag practical magic. Have a listen to the brilliant podcast at Magnolia Street Podcast. So he tagged us in this, which was super nice. Thank you so much.
I
Okay.
commented to thank him for tagging us, and he wrote back, I'm being honest. I love you guys. It's a nice, cozy corner of the internet. And I should have mentioned you in the actual video, but I completely forgot because I recorded it at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's all good. Thanks
It's
for
all
tagging
good.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go watch that video that he made. And then you had another conversation with Mr. Stephen Eilish over
Oh,
about
I
the,
did because I was just curious, and ChatGPT just does the math sometimes, and I had asked it a few different things about the house, about recreating it, because we talked with other people and they had crunched the numbers, more so with like I think it was New Zealand pounds, right?
yeah.
So I asked, scroll back up. I asked ChatGPT. I said I want to try a fun experiment regarding the practical magic at Owen's house. It said perfect, blah blah blah. I want to break down material and cost of what it would take to rebuild today realistically. So it gave me a bunch of information, like a bunch of information. But it also wanted to know, like, do you want to make this like just the outside? Do you want to tailor it for more this, that, or the other? I said, I want 100% replica minus the furniture inside. Like, fuck it. So it did give me a ton of numbers, if I remember correctly. Okay, working total. This said 1.8 million to 2.25 million for a typical site. That's just like a working total. So the scenario B is like museum, fully every interior detail, all the little molding, every copper little finish, the millwork, bespoke glass. This said between 2.4 million and 3.2 million. So I messaged Mr. Steven and I said, does this sound accurate for you? And he replied, which was really nice. He said, it's probably double these numbers. There are a lot of details on this house. In the New York area, probably 4 times that cost. Maybe in a remote rural areas, these numbers might be met, but that's still a lot of money. That's still a lot of money.
And then you have to factor in like property taxes.
Yes.
Like, what would the property tax be on like a multi-million-dollar house?
But he said maybe in a more rural, remote area. And I keep thinking back to the property behind us. You know where I video you guys sometimes with like the field and the big ponds back there?
Yeah.
Like you build a house out here, it's like 300 acres.
Yeah.
You just be on your own, have a little bit of water behind the house, but this house is meant to be on the coast,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you, Stephen, for
02568.
replying.
Oh, one can dream, right?
Yes, we'll keep dreaming.
Like,
We'll keep ChatGPT in the numbers.
it's like that meme, like I won't tell anybody that I won the lottery, but there will be signs, and then
There
it's
will
just like,
be.
that house to show for it.
Ready to dive in?
All right, are we ready to raise the dead?
Let's raise the dead. Raise the roof. Now is the time.
Yeah, now is the hour. Ours is the magic, ours is the power. What is necromancy? So, necromancy is the practice of magic involving communication with the dead by summoning their spirits as apparitions or visions for the purpose of divination, imparting the means to foretell future events and discover hidden knowledge. Sometimes categorized under death magic, the term is occasionally also used in a more general sense to refer to black magic or witchcraft as a whole. Maybe that's why witchcraft has such like a
Dark undertone.
dark undertone, because people think that every witch is out there summoning demons.
Trying to raise the dead. Yeah.
And that's not the case for, today's modern witch anyway.
So maybe we will learn, but the practice of magic involving communication with the dead by summoning spirits, apparitions. So can this be any kind of divinatory, like, what is that called? Automatic writing or drawing, any of that?
Ouija board.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a necromancer. We're both
all
necromancers.
We're all necromancers. Didn't you sent me a video this morning that's like Cinderella was a necromancer?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. In the original Grimm's fairy tale, she says a poem or a prayer to summon her mother, like to get her mother to come back from the dead.
Yeah, she wanted to raise her dead mother to give her a dress or something. I don't remember. Yeah.
It was good timing though. Who knew?
Right. Yeah. Grimm's fairy tales is pretty dark to begin with, but I'm sure there's a lot of necromancy in like fairy tales and, some of our favorite stories that you might not even realize is necromancy. So that's kind of the basic definition of necromancy. We're going to deep dive later on about all the history and, all the ins and outs of necromancy. But first we're going to talk about necromancy as far as the film and the books. First of all, in the film, when Michael dies, Sally goes to the aunt to bring him back from the dead, using a spell that she found in the aunt's grimoire when her mom and dad died. And the aunts say, we can't do that. Even if he comes back, it wouldn't be Michael. He would be something dark and unnatural. And Sally ends up accepting the aunt's decline for this morbid favor, and she accepts her grief, and then she ultimately tries to move on. And later on, we know that Gillian calls Sally after Jimmy had abused her, and Sally goes to run to Gillian's aid. Both girls get kidnapped by Jimmy, and Sally gives him a little too much belladonna in his tequila and efforts to get away, so he stops breathing, and in a panic, Gillian brings up Sally's request to the aunts when Michael died. Gillian says to Sally, when Michael died, you went to the aunts and told him to bring them back, and Sally agrees with the aunts saying that he would come back. She's like, yeah, but they wouldn't do it because he would come back as something dark and unnatural. But then Gillian assures Sally that Jimmy already is dark and unnatural. And I had a thought. Do we think that she was saying this in jest because of his abusive nature? He's just like this dark-natured guy that has this dark streak about him. Or do we think she knows something or has seen some shit that would prove him a bit more, quote, otherworldly, if you catch my drift? If he already was dark and unnatural, perhaps he was, in fact, already of the spiritual persuasion. And our theory, he sold his soul at some point, right?
I'm following.
So there's a pivotal moment in Practical Magic where Sally and Gillian, they attempt what the aunts had warned them to never to do, right? They try to bring the dead back to life. After Jimmy Angelo's death, panic and grief drive the sisters to an act of desperation. Obviously, they don't want to get thrown in jail for murder.
Mm-hmm.
Sally's got 2 little girls she's got to take care of. So in the candlelit kitchen, surrounded by herbs and, all these ancient words and the spell book and not the correct ingredients that they should be using probably, they perform a resurrection ritual that crosses the veil, not for wisdom, not for closure, but to bring Jimmy back, right? To raise him from the dead.
Almost in a selfish way. Almost
right.
in a, we're not bringing him back for his own well-being. We don't want to try to, help him get through this. We know Gillian is not going to end up with him. We just don't want to go to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not and the best intent.
Not at all. And that kind of goes back to our Hecate episode that we just did. And how we were saying Hecate should be, if you use that deity in your everyday practice, you should be giving her offerings and, it's a two-way street. But they only went to her because they needed something. And perhaps that's why this ritual ends up just becoming complete chaos, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's also that to take into consideration. So in occult traditions, this is considered necromancy, right? The most forbidden branch of magic. The word itself comes from the Greek nekros, meaning dead body, and mantia, meaning divination. But what the Owen sisters attempt isn't divination, it's defiance. Their spell is an act of love turned reckless. Sally's insistence on rules collides with Gillian's wild impulsivity, and together they blur the boundary between life and death, right? Sally's always trying to do the right thing, but is the right thing not doing this spell because the aunts didn't want her to, or is the right thing helping her sister because she's in a pickle and now they both don't want to go to jail? They know they just murdered a man, so now bringing him to life will make things right?
I'm sick and tired of cleaning up your messes.
Exactly. So the ritual scene is beautifully unsettling, right? The improper amount of candles that they use, they're using the whipped cream to draw the star, thrifty witchery, that
just not giving a shit, licking whipped cream off his chest.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Trash witchery at its finest. And also mispronouncing their deity's name, right?
Right. Insult to injury.
Exactly. So in this scene, to resurrect Jimmy, they say, black as night, erase death from our sight, white as light, mighty Hecate, make it right. We like to think that they were intending to say Hecate here, or Hecate. And we just did an entire Hecate episode. Hecate is the Greek goddess associated with necromancy, which is the practice of communicating with the dead. Her connection to this practice stems from her domain over witchcraft, magic, ghosts, and the underworld. And as a psychopomp, she is believed to guide souls and has powers over the restless dead. Hecate is also the goddess of the crossroads. And again, we've talked about this plenty of times now. I think we've beaten this dead horse. We have the theory that Jimmy sold his soul to the devil down the crossroads at some point. He may actually even be immortal. Who knows? The girls might not have actually killed him. He may have already been immortal when they put him on the slab to, quote, resurrect him. We talked about that theory on one of our recent episodes. They never even got to stick the pins in his eyes, which would have completed the spell, right? But he woke up anyway. So, like, was he always just, like, immortal? Maybe he just, like, I don't know, he stopped breathing, but maybe that's his soul pact with the devil that he made, right?
Hecate's just at that same crossroads that night with her arms crossed, like,
She's like, I don't claim you.
Right.
Yeah. So, so perhaps we also had a theory he's a body jumper, right? So maybe the body that he jumped in, which was that Jimmy Angelov, right? When Jimmy died, and they resurrected him, that was his soul trying to maybe jump out and claim maybe even Gillian's body, right? He ended up possessing her. I'm going to stick with that theory. Back to Hecate. So she's often depicted holding twin torches to light the way between worlds and keys, symbolizing her dominion over thresholds and hidden knowledge. Dogs, especially black ones, are her companions and are associated with the underworld and the dead, which is interesting, being that Michael was being followed or maybe, quote, guided to his transformation to the spirit realm shortly before his death, right? Because that black dog was following. So now they think they're restoring Jimmy to life, right? Sally and Gillian. But what returns is no longer human, right? When they drop the pins and his eyes like open and he gets up and he's like, I want you to be my wife. His body becomes a vessel for vengeance now, a reminder that death cannot be undone without consequence. In this way, the film reframes necromancy not as empowerment, but as a lesson in balance. The dead demand respect, and magic without intention invites chaos. And what do we know about Hecate? She's also the goddess of chaos, right?
Right.
When the sisters bury Jimmy, it's not just his body that they're laying to rest. It's also their guilt and their fear and their misunderstanding of their own power. Now, their shadow selves is kind of coming to the forefront, right? They're forced to kind of take a look at themselves, forcing them to face the moral weight of resurrection and the truth that some doors once opened can never fully be closed. The resurrection of Jimmy Angelov is more than a horrific moment in their story. It's a mirror reflecting the deeper themes of practical magic. The Owens women have always lived beneath the shadow of death, right? That curse that ensures any man who dares to fall in love with them will meet a tragic end. In that context, Sally and Gillian's act of necromancy isn't simply about reviving Jimmy. It's a desperate attempt to outwit fate itself. By trying to control death, they attempt to control love. Sally's grief for her husband and Gillian's guilt for choosing a violent man, they both manifest in this ritual, as though summoning Jimmy's body might undo the pattern that haunts their family. But the moment Jimmy rises, monstrous and soulless, the sisters are forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. Love cannot be commanded and death cannot be domesticated. And in folklore, necromancy often symbolizes humanity's refusal to accept impermanence, our yearning to reverse loss and to cling to what's gone. The practical magic scene turns that idea inward. Jimmy's reanimation is grotesque, not because he's undead, but because he embodies everything the sisters have refused to release. Fear, guilt, the illusion of control. The magic goes wrong because their hearts are divided. When they finally exorcise his spirit later in the film, that's not just an act of cleansing, it's a ritual of surrender, right? They learn that true power isn't found in forcing life where there should be death, but in accepting the natural rhythm of both. And necromancy becomes the turning point between shadow and light, from control to acceptance, from secrecy to sisterhood. And haven't we always said that we thought Sally could be a Virgo? She needs to control everything.
Yeah.
Right?
They didn't have the Samuel Diaz to come in, right? Like Maria tried the same thing. Like she had to be talked back down to reality. Like death is the only cure for old age. That's the way it ends for everybody.
Exactly. That's a good point. That whole passage in the book where, Maria's refusal to let Abraham go and Samuel was like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
That's not how life works. Like, people have to die at some point. I was actually just on TikTok, I think it was last night. There was a girl who she freeze dried her cat.
Oh no.
She freeze dried. It's not like taxidermy. Like they don't like skin the animal and then stuff it. Like it's literally just freeze dried. Like they take out all of the wet components and you're just left with the shell of the animal. So she created a shrine to her cat, which she had freeze dried, and like she's got its ashes in like another pot, and like she did that whole thing. And I'm just like, I will be torn to shit when my pets go, when that time comes. I know it, but I don't know if I could ever try to keep their physical form around. I think that would just tear me up more.
I agree. I agree with you.
To like have their corpse like next to me, but knowing that like they're not real. And then like I feel like in turn that kind of maybe creates some psychological stuff. Like, did you just watch the Ed Gein story on Netflix?
No, I know his story, but I haven't watched the new one with that actor.
Yeah. So basically his mother dies, but he can't accept it. So now he digs up other women who remind him of his mother from graves. And like, I don't know, there's just something about not being able to let go, like coming to terms with that. People who aren't processing their grief, right, in a healthy way, it can manifest as something a lot darker.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And even having that little, freeze-dried animal there, maybe that animal's spirit is confused, like even more confused than it would be about trying to move on. Like, oh, my body is still here and it's just not where it's supposed to be. I don't like that idea.
Yeah, I know. Every part of me is like, oh my God, that's a good idea. But then also I'm like, well, then like, I'm not really letting it go.
Right.
Like,
I love the little shadow boxes where you take the footprint or a whisker, a little tuft of hair, and that's your reminder. Your time together is your reminder. And that is hard, especially, the death between a human and the death between a pet, totally different, equally as painful, but different pain, and letting go of human loved ones and friends. And I'm still in that cycle of like denial, bargaining, grief, sadness, and it keeps circling back around. Like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? You can't do anything. And that's you have to be okay there.
Right. Yeah. And it's okay. It takes time, it takes work, and you'll never get over your loved ones that have passed on, but you can just be happy with the memories that you have of them is like the one way that I kind of try to find solace,
Somebody posed the question, probably on TikTok, that if everyone you've ever lost was in a room, and you cross over, if you believe in that, who are you going to first? Who are you going to go hug first? And that is like, that's a hard choice. I know who I would go to, but think about that. Like all of the people who have passed, like who would you go to first?
Probably my Grandma Joan.
Yeah. Grandma Joan.
No, ifs, and, or buts. I mean, is that me or you? Do you hear that?
I do hear that.
Where's that coming from?
I don't know. I'm not on the keyboard or anything.
Neither am I. That was
weird.
Is
it Spirit trying to communicate?
Oh my God, that's Grandma Joan!
Grandma Joan!
I was like, I'm here, bitch.
What was that? I don't know what that was.
That's so funny. Anyway, what were we talking about? I don't even remember what we were just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would go, the first person I would probably go to is my grandma.
Yeah.
And then like, obviously I miss my pop too, her husband, my mother's father.
Yeah.
I miss all of them. And my great grandmother. I miss all of them, obviously. But my Grandma Joan I had the closest connection with, so
love it.
It would be her right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now's the time to talk to her.
I know. The veil is thin. The air is crisp. The veil is thin.
Oh, I love it.
The lantern's glowing to welcome you in.
I love how you introed that song by saying this is probably the most romantic Halloween song you're ever gonna hear.
It really is.
True.
Like, I don't think a Halloween song as romantic, maybe it does. Maybe one exists out there, but I feel like we've written it.
We nailed it.
We did. I think.
Have you heard that TikTok Halloween song? It's like, Halloween, come on, baby, turn the fireplace on. Halloween, na-na-na. It's really cute. Cute doo-woppy song.
Aw, I just came across a song. It's an AI artist. I think her name is Jenny Stardust. Some guy created her, and she made a song called I Smell Bullshit or something like that.
Oh.
Because for our most recent episode, The Distinct Smell of Bullshit, I posted our little infographic, the Listen Now thing, the Listen Now card on our Instagram. And I posted it to her stories and I used that song.
Cute.
And I was like, that's really funny. Who is this artist? So I looked it up. It was a fucking AI artist. I thought it was a real band.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Jimmy's resurrection. So getting back to that. So as chaotic and terrifying as it is, it ultimately brings the Owens women back to life, and it forces them to reckon with the cycle of loss and renewal that defines their lineage, reminding us that all magic doesn't erase grief, it transforms it, right? So what began as an act of necromancy becomes, by the film's end, a lesson in spirit. Quintessence.
Background. Yeah.
Yeah. And when Sally and Gillian confront Jimmy's ghost in the Owens house, they're no longer trying to resurrect him. They're learning how to release him. And that shift marks the true evolution of their magic, from control to communion. In witchcraft, the element of spirit, sometimes called aether, and also quintessence, as we learned on that episode we did a couple weeks ago, represents the unseen thread that binds all the others, the earth, air, fire, and water. It's the energy that connects the living and the dead, the tangible and the ethereal. Necromancy, when viewed through this lens, isn't just about raising the dead. It's about recognizing that death never truly severs connection. Spirit remains. The Owens women learn that lesson through trial and fire. Their home becomes a liminal space, part haunted house, part sanctuary, right? A little bit of both, where the veil between worlds is thin enough for transformation to occur. When the coven of women gather to banish Jimmy for good, they don't just cast out darkness, they invite the light back in, right? At the end, there's that blast of light, and then they see Maria's face, their ancestor, and it's kind of like that ultimate call back to power. It's a resurrection of a different kind, the rebirth of their own power and their faith in each other. From necromancy to spirit work, practical magic reminds us that the veil between life and death isn't a wall, it's a doorway, and sometimes the bravest magic is knowing when to close it. Right?
Yes. Boundaries are good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Queen of the Crossroads a little bit more. In classical mythology, Hecate is the goddess of witchcraft, necromancy, and the liminal, the spaces between life and death, light and shadow, crossroads, and thresholds. She presides over graveyards, ghosts, and all acts of resurrection or summoning. So, real quick question. You know, in like Catholic Church, like you do the transubstantiation, and that's the blood and the body and the blood. Is that like resurrecting Jesus every time? Are they doing necromancy kind of stuff every Sunday?
Or Easter, because isn't that when Jesus rose from the dead?
Yes. Yes.
So, in essence, well, yeah. In the Bible, don't they shame like necromancy? But they do it too.
Yeah, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, right?
Jesus was a zombie himself.
He was a zombie and a necromancer.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. What a Renaissance man.
For real. But it's so like, oh, the hypocrisy though. Like,
I know.
Pretty sure in the Bible they shame necromancy, but their poster boy is like all about it.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
I
please.
don't know.
All right. Anyway,
in the film's resurrection scene, Sally and Gilly unknowingly invoke Hecate's domain. They perform a ritual at night in a circle surrounded by the symbols of death, with Jimmy's body, the herbs, the needles, you know, their invocation. And a circle doesn't have to be a huge circle of women. It can be the power of two. It can be the power of one, right? And in the kitchen here, it becomes less a modern day crossroads, but a sacred threshold between worlds. The kitchen is like the alchemical hub of your home.
Right.
The act of crossing the veil and calling a soul back is, by definition, Hecatian rite. It's not surprising that things go wrong. Hecate's rites were never meant to be used for selfish or emotional resurrection. Her necromancy was about wisdom, not possession. And the Owen sisters' spell violates the sacred boundaries of Hecate's guards. And the result is Jimmy's monstrous return. And this reflects her mythic warning. Those who defy death are consumed by it.
And consumed they were. That the whole rest of that film, like chaos central.
They had that guilt on their shoulder. the rest of the film. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about the frogs here and the messengers of the underworld, because immediately after that resurrection, the Owens house becomes infested with, in the garden, we see the frogs coming out from Gillian's chair, and they're very symbolic. They deliver the ring as the sign to Gary, something's not right here.
Hmm.
But mythically, frogs are potent necromantic symbols. In ancient Greece and Egyptian cosmology, frogs are associated with rebirth, resurrection, and liminal transformation. The Egyptian goddess Hecate, whose name is etymologically tied to Hecate, was a frog-headed goddess of resurrection and fertility, who breathed life into the dead and attended childbirths, life emerging from death. Frogs live in two worlds, water and land, making them natural symbols of crossing realms, just like necromancy itself. So when frogs flood the Owens home, it's not just a gag, it's a visual metaphor. The act of resurrection has disturbed the balance, opening the floodgates between the worlds. The living and the dead, the natural and supernatural, begin to bleed together. That episode about frogs was such like an eye-opening moment. Like, did they really mean to have frogs on that page and Hecate connection to Hecate?
Uh-huh.
Amazing.
Isn't it? That also kind of reminds me of that scene in Magnolia. Magnolia! The name Magnolia.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that scene at the end of Magnolia when all the frogs fall from the sky. And I'm pretty sure they quote a passage from Exodus. I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
But yeah, it is very a biblical occurrence.
Like
but
the plagues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have the black dogs as psychopomps and the guardians of the dead. In the same way that frogs symbolize the return from the underworld, black dogs symbolize the escort to it. In Hecate's mythology, she's always accompanied by black hounds, her loyal familiars who guard graveyards and crossroads. Their howls are said to signal her arrival. And in folklore, the sound of dogs barking at night meant the queen of ghosts was near. And in practical magic, the dogs are psychopomps, guides for the souls, harbingers of death. And in this context, they're warnings. They mark the threshold Sally and Gillian are about to cross, the point of past the point of no return. Anyway, so bringing it all together in this scene, we have Hecate, who presides as the unseen guardian of the veil. We have the frogs emerging as symbols of rebirth and the chaos of life spilling out from death, and the black dogs, even if unseen, but felt through this archetype and sound. They act as her emissaries, reminding us that what is called forth must eventually be sent back. And together they weave this mythic tapestry that transforms a cinematic moment into an act of living folklore, a crossroads of love, loss, and forbidden magic, overseen by the goddess who rules all thresholds.
Yeah, that Hecate episode that we just did was really cool. Very informative, eye-opening. We got to sit down with Vinny Higginbotham.
Juicy. Yeah, that was been our longest episode in a while.
Yeah. So guys, go check that out if you want more on Hecate. And then lastly, moving on to the exorcism scene at the end of the film. My question was, would this be considered necromancy, right? Though spiritual in nature, this technically does not count as necromancy. So exorcisms do not generally qualify as necromancy in most religions and cultural contexts. They are actually considered to be opposite practices. So necromancy, by definition, is the practice of attempting to communicate with the spirits of the dead, or sometimes, you can get this, you can have this one. Demons! For the purpose of divination, foretelling future events, or gaining secret knowledge. The goal with necromancy, the practitioner seeks to control or manipulate spirits to gain information or power. It is widely considered a form of black magic or a grave spiritual danger, and is explicitly condemned in the Bible, like we were saying before, and by the Catholic Church as an abomination. Now, moving on to exorcism. By definition, exorcism is the religious or spiritual practice of evicting evil spirits or demons from a person, place, or object believed to be possessed or infested by them. The goal here is to liberate the possessed individual from the influence or control of a malevolent entity, typically by invoking a higher power such as God or Jesus Christ. Exorcism is a formal rite within many religions, including the Catholic Church, approached with prudence and careful distinction from mental illness. The power is believed to come from the invoked divine authority, not the exorcist's own magical manipulation. So the fundamental difference lies in the intent and the source of power. Necromancy involves seeking out and attempting to control the dead or spirits for personal knowledge or will manipulation, a practice considered illicit and dangerous dangerous. An exorcism, on the other hand, involves commanding an unwanted spirit to leave in the name of a legitimate divine authority as a form of spiritual defense and healing. Yeah, so while medieval necromancy did, in some historical contexts, incorporate elements and formulas derived from Christian and Jewish exorcism teachings, the core purpose and modern understanding of the two practices remain distinct and, in fact, opposed, which I think is very intriguing.
Was there any necromancy talk in our Magus episode? I can't remember.
I think there might have been. I have to go back to those notes since we're going to take a little break after our book stuff, and I'm going to pop some more information in. But yeah, I think you might be right. I think I do remember some of that.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the books. Do you want to take us through Practical Magic?
So while Alice Hoffman's Practical Magic doesn't feature a scene that mirrors the film's literal resurrection of Jimmy Angelo, necromantic themes absolutely pulse beneath the surface of this book. Hoffman treats death, memory, and lingering spirits not through sensational dark magic, but through emotional necromancy.
Emotional damage.
Emotional damage is the tagline for this film.
Right.
Ancestral trauma. The way the Owens women call the dead back through grief, memory, and love. So let's break it down. So we have that haunting memory of Michael. So after Sally's husband, Michael's sudden death, Sally becomes a living ghost in her own home. She doesn't perform any spells to bring him back, yet her grief conjures him constantly through dreams, sensations, the blur of the line between remembrance and haunting. She can no longer see certain colors. It's really affecting her, every sense of her.
Yeah.
On page 42, it says, Sally was the one who cried so many tears. There were mornings when she couldn't open her eyes. Each evening, she searched the dining room for the Death Watch beetle, who'd been said to have caused all this grief. Of course, she never found it, and so she didn't believe in it. But such things hide in the folds of the widow's black skirts and beneath the white sheet where one person sleeps, restlessly dreaming of everything she'll never have. In time, Sally stops believing in anything at all, and then the whole world went gray. She could not see orange or red or certain shades of green. Her favorite sweater and the leaves of new daffodils were completely and utterly lost. This is necromancy in the most human form, the summoning of the dead through longing. Sally's refusal to move on keeps Michael's spirit tethered. In Hoffman's betrayal, that is a quiet kind of curse, the inability to let death complete its cycle. You have to let it cycle through.
Right, that's what we were just saying about that girl that freeze-dried her cat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, maybe that soul of that little cat is still tethered because it's like, maybe it's confused because she won't let it go.
Then we have the home itself. The Owens house functions as a necromantic space. It's described as alive with echoes, presence, and ancestral whispers. Though the books doesn't feature traditional necromantic rituals, the house acts as a liminal threshold, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is paper thin. When visitors step inside, they feel something shift, as if they'd entered a space between worlds. Hoffman offers hints that the aunts commune with the spirits of their ancestors, a subtle thread of spiritual necromancy that reinforces their connection to lineage and legacy. On page 115 it says, if a candle burns blue, that is something else entirely. That's no luck at all, for it means there's a spirit in the house. And if the flame should flicker, then grow stronger each time the candle is lit, the spirit is settling in. Its essence is wrapping around the furniture and the floorboards. It's claiming the cabinets and the closets, and will soon be rattling windows and doors. Sometimes it takes a good while before anyone in the house realizes what has happened. People want to ignore what they can't understand. They're looking for logic at any cost. Then we have Jimmy and Gillian. In this novel, Jimmy's presence after death is less about physical resurrection, as it is in the movie, and more about psychic possession. After Gillian's abusive lover dies, he, in essence, clings to her. She feels haunted and bound to him, almost as if his shadow has taken root in her life. And when they bury him in the garden, his spirit festers, and the garden itself begins to die and do weird things, and all this weird shit starts happening.
Right.
The corruption of natural life mirrors necromantic fallout, an imbalance between life and death. The exorcism of Jimmy's spirit later in the novel restores that balance, and they do it a little differently than in the film too.
Yeah.
Echoing the same moral of the film, that to tamper with death is to distort nature. Only through release brings renewal. And then there are the Owens women who are the keepers of the veil. Throughout the book, Hoffman paints the Owens women as intermediaries between the mortal and spiritual worlds. They are sought for love spells, death charms, and blessings. all acts that skirt necromancy's edge. But rather than raising the dead, they help the living make peace with loss. In this sense, necromancy becomes a metaphor for Hoffman's broader theme of transformation through grief. And the dead don't return to flesh. They return as wisdom, intuition, and ancestral guidance. So in conclusion, Alice's practical magic reimagines necromancy as something deeply emotional rather than ritualistic. Her witches don't break the laws of nature. I love it so much. Yeah. I love that. They feel the ache of wanting to. And this book reminds us that love isn't a kind of resurrection spell. It calls the dead by name, keeps their stories alive, and ensures that what's lost is never truly gone.
That's kind of like, you know how they say, I guess, artists, creatives, authors, songwriters, they're all immortal because their legacy, their words, their songs, their stories, they carry through, they transcend space and time. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like when you're reading their books or listening to their songs, it's almost kind of like necromancy in essence, because like every time you listen to them, it's like their spirit kind of comes through and it's still there. It's lingering, and it's going to linger forever because of that work that they put out into the world.
For sure.
We're immortal now. We are songs.
Immortal. Yeah. You know how they say the internet is forever? Where are all my MySpace pictures?
Right. You know? Yeah. What happened to all the MySpace pictures?
Right.
They're not in like the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, really.
All right. So moving on to rules of magic. This is where things get especially fascinating. Alice Hoffman deepens the theme of necromancy in this book far more overtly than in Practical Magic. While she never uses the word necromancy outright, the book is full of its essence, communing with the dead, summoning spirits through longing or ritual, and walking that fragile line between grief and forbidden magic. And also she talks a lot about Samhain, right? Being this liminal time, liminal space in this book more specifically as well. So these are kind of the most striking examples and how they tie into the themes and concepts of necromancy. So first off, Franny and the return of Jet's familiar, the Crow. We just did the Crow episode too. Guys, go listen to our Corvids episode. The Crow as a psychopomp. In Rules of Magic, birds, especially crows and ravens, are recurring messengers between worlds. After Jet's familiar dies, Franny feels the creature's spirit around her, still watching and still guiding. Hoffman uses this as subtle necromancy, the witch's bond with an animal spirit transcending death. But yeah, so Franny and the Crow as a psychopomp do have that connection.
Yes.
And Franny's acceptance of this continued connection suggests that witches are not separated from the dead, they live among them. This foreshadows the deeper necromantic energy that surfaces later in this book, that death is never a full severance for the Owens family. On page 260 it says, "Today everything smelled earthy, the rich scent of mulch and decaying leaves and roots. It was an ending and a beginning, for the month itself was like a gate. October began as a golden hour and ended with Samhain, the day when the worlds of the living and the dead opened to each other. There was no choice but to walk through the gate of time. Franny had already packed up her suitcase and carried the grimoire with her. The book and all it contained was now theirs." So this frames the temporal threshold, October and Samhain, as a, quote, gate, a classical necromantic trope, a boundary moment when the worlds of the living and the dead overlap. And that was probably the case when they did that whole wishing spell in Central Park under that beautiful red oak tree, which, mind you, also we did that a whole alchemy red oak tree episode talking about trees as like portals and also psychopomps to different worlds and realms, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they did that ritual under that red oak tree on Samhain, the most liminal day of the witch's year.
Exactly.
And they both of their wishes somehow came or manifested itself in one way or another.
Right.
So number 2, Jet's grief and the voice of Levi Willard. So after Jet's beloved Levi dies, she continues to feel him all around, right? Almost as if he's whispering through the veil. Jet's yearning for Levi is textbook case of emotional necromancy, just like Sally with Michael in the first
damage.
book. Right. Just like Sally with Michael in the first book, right? It was very hard for her to let go and process that grief. So summoning the dead through love so powerful that it actually bends reality. This connection becomes dangerous though, right? As I was saying, like it could be, if like you're not processing your grief in a healthy way, it can manifests as something a lot darker and a little more dangerous. Jet's obsession with his memory pulls her closer to death herself. She has that moment when she tries to take her own life in the bathtub of the hotel that her and Levi were supposed to stay at together the night of his death, right down to the very room that they had booked and were supposed to stay in together. So on page 167, it says, she thought about what might have been if the accident hadn't happened, how they would have walked into the hotel together, come up to their room, this very room. They would have sat on the bed, shyly at first, before daring to embrace. He would have been gentle and kind, although mad for her, and they might have cried together afterward, overwhelmed by sex and emotion. She supposed she was weeping as she thought about this, and the sound carried, and there was a knock at the door. So, end quote there, but she actually checked in without any luggage, if you remember in the book, which alerted the bellman, Raphael, right? And his knock at the door when he heard her crying, it's most likely what ended up saving her from taking her own life. And eventually, Jet's crossing over later in life feels less like dying and more like reuniting, right? It's kind of like that necromantic fulfillment of hers and Levi's love story.
She's not like looking forward to it, but she knows it's time and she's lived her life and she's like made peace with it. And she's saying her goodbyes and leaving little hints and like having her whiskey at the Black Rabbit Inn and like just really taking her time with her sister to say goodbye. And, you know, all the things that she would never have gotten to do had Raphael not been there for her.
Exactly. Yeah. So then talking about Jet visiting Levi's grave. So here's a quote. This says, trying to keep them from spending the night of Jet's 17th birthday at the Plaza Hotel, Susanna and Dr. Burke Owens cause a horrific car accident that kills both them and Levi. The sole survivor, Jet, grieves Levi for the rest of her life, never allowing herself to love again. As she continues to visit Levi's tomb or grave in Massachusetts, she finally strikes a rapport with his father, the Reverend, and they both find a sense of peace. That's not a passage from the book, but rather I think for somebody on supersummary.com posted that, kind of like a little summarization of what happened. So the act of visiting Levi's tomb becomes an ongoing ritual, right? Jet goes there, she's got her ritual down, she brings the daffodils, and Jet's grieving is itself a necromantic gesture. She's repeatedly returning to the place of death to commune with remains. And I guess, like, if you're going to visit a loved one's gravesite in a cemetery, in essence, is that necromancy?
Right? That's how it kind of feels when I've been working on this writing project, that it's been very difficult to like keep going back and keep ripping that Band-Aid off and like keep experiencing those old memories. And like, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But it needs to be told. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just very difficult. This is the 5th draft, right? So I've been working on this for a year now.
Yeah.
A little over a year, and it's so painful and it's not getting easier. And I'm like, why do I keep going back to this? Why do I keep resurrecting this? But something is like, you have to get it out there. You have to work through this. This is your closure.
Right. So you think you're wading through all that muck and like, you know, going back through all of that heartache and grief, getting through it. But do you think once you ultimately release it, do you think that will kind of lift some kind of weight off your shoulders where you'll feel at peace with it at that point?
I think so. Because the end of the story is mimicking very much like what I see happening or what I want to happen. So yeah, I think you're right. I'm really hoping it does. But like, grief is never over.
Right.
So it'll hopefully be a lighter a lighter process afterward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to Vincent's visions and the summoned spirits, right? Vincent Owens has his own psychic sensitivity that makes him a natural necromancer. And Vincent was always kind of drawn to that darker, esoteric kind of vibe. Like, he carried around that magus his entire life. So even if he never performs a ritual, he does see the dead. He hears them as a child. He has prophetic visions and speaks with spirits that others cannot perceive. He had that whole instance with that black mirror. He was able to see, you know, his fate. And I don't know if that had anything to do with the dead, but that mirror was an heirloom passed down from ancestors, so perhaps that's the ancestors giving him these visions. In one haunting scene, he channels messages from the other side the kind of involuntary necromancy that feels like mediumship, Hoffman uses Vincent to represent that thin place between life and death, art and afterlife, song and spirit, what we were just saying, right?
Yeah.
You are made immortal through your music, through your stories, through everything you put out into the world. So when he fakes his own death later on in the novel, it completes his transformation into a ghost in the world of the living, a man both dead and alive, echoing necromancy's liminal paradox. So on page 300, it says, for the date of the concert, he'd chosen Samhain, All Hallows Eve, the night of the death and transformation. The sky was black and filled with stars, and the leaves on the chestnut trees curled up as a sudden flash of cold descended upon the city. So he actually chooses, again, he chooses the most liminal day of the witch's year to falsely off himself.
He's an emo guy.
He's such an emo boy, right? But then there was like this one thing in the book that said he took like wolfsbane or something.
Oh yeah, he tried to pull like a Romeo and Juliet, like a fake sleepy death.
Yeah, and I'm like, that would have for sure killed him. Like even like the slightest bit. I read an article where like a gardener just brushed up against wolfsbane and like they died. I don't know, maybe he should have used something a little less fatal.
Yeah.
Because he didn't really die in that passage, right? That was his fake that was him faking his death, because ultimately find out he's living in Book of Magic. So I don't know, that part just didn't make sense to me, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
Anyway, so moving on to Isabel Owens, right? The apparition of her shortly before Isabel's passing, Franny sees an apparition of her. She gives her Maria Sapphire and the message that wear it and your heart will come back to you. And she says, do it now. She also told her that she was now the keeper of the grimoire, right? She like whispered it in her ear, and I don't think we find that out until a little later on. Hoffman frames this as ancestral necromancy. The Owens women commune with their lineage through clairsentience, dreams, and this sudden knowing, like that claircognizance as well. Isabel's continued influence over her nieces and later her grandnieces is a form of benevolent necromancy. It's ancestral magic at work. On page 25, it says, Franny had taken to sitting on the back staircase to eavesdrop. She'd bought a blue notebook in the pharmacy to write down her aunt's remedies. Star tulip to understand dreams, bee balm for a restful sleep, black mustard seed to repel nightmares, remedies that use essential oil of almond or apricot or myrrh from thorn trees in the desert, 2 eggs which must never be eaten, set under a bed to clean a tainted atmosphere, vinegar as a cleansing bath, garlic, salt, and rosemary, the ancient spell to cast away evil. And though not necromantic in the sense of raising the dead, this is ritual magic in the liminal realm. The cleaning of, quote, the tainted atmosphere, the use of herbs with protective or purifying intent. These are tools for negotiating spiritual boundaries. So in essence, I guess it kind of is necromancy, because you're kind of trying to cleanse that liminality.
You're connecting with spirit somehow, whether it's good or bad spirit. You're trying to clear away the bad. So I get it.
Yeah. I heard this thing about sage and Palo Santo. Like, I don't know how true this is, but someone was saying that sage, if you burn sage, it clears away all spirits.
All energy.
Energy, right. It just clears all that spiritual stuff floating around, right? Palo Santo, on the other hand, if you burn Palo Santo, that's supposed to welcome in the good spirits, like the ancestors.
Right.
And so it's not supposed to keep anything away. Palo Santo's supposed to like just greet them, welcome them in.
Sage is like your bleach. And Palo Santo is like your simple green or your floor wash.
Or your Myers.
Yes, exactly.
Your Myers. It's a little counter fixer-upper or
my dad was so cute.
Refresher.
Like, for being anti-witchcraft, whatever, yesterday at the antiques place, he's like, hey, they have sage over there if you want some. I was like, I'm good. And then he walked off for a while and he grabbed it and came back. I'm like, thanks, Pop. I'm really good.
He bought you sage?
Yeah. I was like, thank you. You're nice.
I saw you and your mom made those awesome corn dollies. Those were awesome.
We did. I wanna make some little corn fairies next. You might be getting one for Christmas.
Can you post like a how-to on how to do those?
Sure, I'll try. Yeah.
Did your mom teach you how to make those?
So I haven't made one in years. So she and I were like troubleshooting as we were making them. They turned out really cute. I can make a little how-to video. Easy. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't have time, I know video takes time to like edit and shit. So I mean, even if you want to just like explain how to do it, those are really cool.
Thank you.
So cute and so witchy again, like your mom. She knows she's a witch. She knows she's a witch. And like Dee does some stuff too, and I'm like, you're a witch.
Right?
Yeah. So let's talk about the Owens family garden as a necromantic space. It's full of poisonous and healing plants and is literally and symbolically the space of death and rebirth. Burials, ashes, ancestral roots, it all coexists here. And plants like belladonna and henbane, traditional necromantic herbs, grow under Franny's care. She tends to them knowing their dual nature, to heal or to harm, to preserve life or to bridge the grave. And in this way, the garden itself becomes a necromantic altar, a living threshold between the worlds, right? But in practical magic, they do bury Jimmy's body in the garden, right?
Yes, they do. Yep.
Under the lilacs, or the lilacs grow as a result of that.
Yes.
So yeah, so it is that liminal space of like, who knows how many bodies they've buried on that property.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, okay, is the film, like when Jet's like, it was an accident, is that a nod to the books and like how the aunts just roll up at the end of the book with like the lime and the lie, like they've done this a million times before?
Right. Or
right?
Like the lightning and the boys crossing the field, like that was an accident, like that wasn't us.
Right. Yeah, but I wonder how many lovers lost, right? How many, quote, accidents has Aunt Franny and Jet had where they had to dissolve a body on their property? And maybe that's why their garden is so beautiful. It's flourishing, because they're just decomposing bodies, just fertilizing everything.
Right.
And that's why things grow out of season.
There was a Stephen Alish comment. I don't know if you saw he posted a picture of his garden.
Did he?
Yes. And somebody asked, do you have a greenhouse? Let me find it. Yeah, so he posted some pictures of his garden, and somebody said, do you have a glass greenhouse, Stephen? My secret fantasy is to have a heated glass greenhouse to fool nature into believing we live somewhere else. And he said, I do not. I sometimes think of them, but feel they are potentially futile in the face of winter and might just prolong the agony of loss. I would rather celebrate it and let spring come without lifting a finger. And then I commented, I said, sir, you are literally the reason I have a greenhouse.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah.
Does he even know the monsters he's created?
No, I know. It's funny.
Oh yeah, that is funny. Okay, so here's like some other instances of, I guess, necromancy concepts and themes on the Owens curse and the danger tied to love and death. So when a flirtation with twin brothers results in their death, Franny, Jet, and Vincent decide the family's curse is real and vow not to fall in love. Death is intimately tied to the magical lineage here. The repeated pattern of loss and the decision to avoid love as a protective measure points to the haunt of necromantic logic. Love draws death into their orbit. I was watching this video about egregores. It's like something, you ever heard of the egregore?
I think so. You could go ahead and explain it. I think I've heard of it.
It's kind of like by perpetuating this belief that bad things happen to you, you keep drawing more of it into your orbit, and then it becomes this like whole other monster that you created in your mind. And like this Owens family curse is basically an egregore. Like,
this was my summer. This was my summer.
This was my summer.
Bad shit kept going on, and I was like, I'm cursed.
Yeah, between Avi's toes and my card, like drowning, and it's just like one thing after another. Yeah, when we have a stroke of bad luck, we think that this like bad juju, this like curse is attached to us, and then maybe more things kind of snowball and happen as a result. And then you're like, am I fucking cursed?
You draw in that energy.
Exactly. And by this point in time in the Owens family legacy, in this lineage, like by this point, this egregore is so big that like now it's just happening to every person down the line.
Yeah, it's perpetuated for decades and centuries through this family.
Exactly.
It's only getting bigger.
Right. Yeah. So it just becomes this monster now that they can't control.
It's the Babadook.
It's the Babadook.
Yes.
Oh my god. Babadook. I love that movie. I hate that kid in that movie though.
Yeah, fuck that kid.
He's so annoying. All right. So rules, rituals, and mourning prescriptions, as in mourning. In a summary of magical, quote, rules in Rules of Magic, this is noted. So it says, to mourn properly, you must drape all the furniture in white sheets, wear a black silk band on your right arm, turn the mirrors toward the wall, sprinkle salt on windowsills, leave sprigs of rosemary outside the doors, wear white to the funeral, go barefoot to it out of respect. So these are conventional mourning rituals, but they also implicitly manage the boundary with the dead. Like, for example, turning the mirrors away, sprinkling salt. These gestures are protective and symbolic in necromantic contexts. And I would imagine like saging as well, like trying to keep away any of the spirit world, putting up that protective boundary. So, in conclusion, in Rules of Magic, necromancy isn't a forbidden art, it's a natural inheritance. The Owens women are born necromancers in the old sense of the word. Those who understand that death is porous, memory is magic, and love never stops reaching across worlds. Where practical magic treats necromancy as a cautionary tale, don't meddle with the dead. And Rules of Magic reframes it as more of a sacred kinship. Honor them, listen to them, and learn from them.
I really love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in Magic Lessons, the very first book chronologically, Maria's story, the following passage is suggestive of boundary crossing between life and death. So this says, from the book, when Faith took the life of the sparrow, she closed her eyes as she wrung its neck. And as she did so, she could feel the wrongness of her deeds pulsing. Whoever was charmed by this spell would feel the pain he had caused others. His deeds would be pulled out of him and bite him as if all his wrongdoings were sharp teeth. That moment isn't exactly resurrection, but it's deeply necromantic in spirit, taking life to channel its essence for magic, to make a spell, quote, bite back on someone else. It's an act of transformation across life and death lines.
Yeah, and that's also kind of goes back to the whole, like, Hecate spell that they do in the movie, the resurrection scene, like, only doing it for personal gain, not because they actually have a connection and a rapport with the deity.
Yeah.
No, that's a no-no.
So some other quotes from this book, Magic Lessons, that hint at the borderline magic and mysterious process, though not full necromancy in style, include there's a description of the hidden or sympathetic inks. We had a whole ink episode, check that out, that become invisible only when certain conditions are met, hinting at the unseen becoming manifest. Quote, there are sympathetic inks. A scribe could write with one and it would not be seen until heat was applied. The message would suddenly be visible. This was true magic, a making and unmaking of the worlds. And then a magic ritual involving bones, heart, liver, and a sparrow to force someone to feel the weight of their sins. This is Faith's spell against her bio daddy. This is a quote. Faith filled her basket. There were jumbled weeds, still stalks of belladonna, the bones and heart and liver. She closed her eyes as she wrung its neck, hearkening back to the passage we read earlier about the sparrow. These aren't resurrection spells, but they reach across the boundary of life and death, treating death or part of it as raw material for magical working. That's a necromantic impulse, using the power of death or the death to effect change in the living. So on page 347 it says, it was true, when you save someone, they belong to you in some small way, but it was also true that you belong to them. And this speaks to the spiritual entanglement, the idea that saving or reviving someone leaves a tether or a link across life and death, which is a core motif in necromantic narratives. Then we have the quote, thorn, blood, earth, love. That was the riddle that Abraham Diaz held in his hand. This is the invocation of that thorn, blood, earth. This evokes traditional magical elements associated with death, sacrifice, and burial rites, the very materials one might associate with necromantic work. We also have the quote that goes, what you send out comes back to you threefold. What you give to the world returns in kind. Blood begets blood. And this is the law of return, often called the threefold law in witchcraft, suggesting a metaphysical balance that is especially relevant when one meddles with forces of life and death. So how are these fragments suggestive of necromancy? So we have material and ritual imagery. We have the bones, organs, dangerous herbs like belladonna, blood, weeds. These are materials often used in death magic or spirit work. Then there's the ethical tension, the quote wrongness felt by Faith as she kills the sparrow hints at the moral price of using death in magic. We have spiritual tethering, the quote you belong to them quote suggests that in saving or reviving, a spiritual bond is forged, echoing traditional necromantic themes of connection between the living and the dead. Then we have sacrifice and return, blood begetting blood. This underscores the costliness of altering life and death cycles, a reoccurring motif in necromantic lore. Yeah. So here are a few shorter excerpts and summaries that hint strongly at that boundary crossing or attempting at the reversal of death or spiritual tension. So here's the quote. Maria fills her boots with rocks and gets him out. This is when she's saving Samuel.
Yeah.
But he's already dead. She pulls him out and pounds on his chest. Faith warns her that it is too late. Maria is about to pay the price to bring him back when she starts to hear his breath again. So in this moment, that leads into this necromantic impulse, the attempt to reverse death. So are doctors necromancers?
Ooh, that's a good question.
They bring people back from the dead all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this suggests that Maria is on the brink of trying something powerful or dangerous to resurrect Samuel, who has, quote, died. He's not breathing. There's no pulse. Whether the act succeeds or what the cost is, this little summary indicates that she's about to pay the price. She's about to go to that left-handed magic side and use her blood for this resurrection spell. So another quote goes, Hannah carried the cat with her into the woods and buried it in a green hollow. And this is after the townsmen nailed her cat to the door. Mm-hmm. Another quote from Magic Lesson says, Willow is sacred magic transporting the soul. Yew signifies life, death, and rebirth. The seeds are poisonous. This is more symbolic than literal necromancy, but it is strongly gestured at the spiritual transit. The burial of the cat, the mention of transporting the soul, and the association of yew, which is a classical tree in death and rebirth, all operate in that liminal space where necromantic symbolism lives.
I was looking for that passage that we were talking about earlier about Maria trying to keep Abraham from dying.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's on page 252. Okay. Yeah, so Maria, she's sky-clad. She's trying to do this spell to, keep Abraham from dying or to reverse, I guess, his condition. So this says, when Samuel entered his father's chamber that evening, the scene he witnessed stunned him. They had never discussed where Maria had come from, or more importantly, what she was. Now it was clear. There was no mistaking witchery. Black candles were lit around the old man's bed, so many that the smoke scorched the ceiling and billowed into the corners of the room. A line of salt had been poured along the walls so that no evil could enter, and herbs were strewn over the bed. Maria sat before the old man, naked, slick with sweat, as she chanted an ancient spell so dangerous and powerful, the words turned to ash as she spoke them, and her mouth burned as she called to Hecate.
There it is.
There it is, the goddess of magic and sorcery and light, and, death and transformation. Mm-hmm. She says, Abracadabra, I will create as I speak. I will force into being that which is impossible and illogical, all that is against the rules of men, a shield to prevent death, no matter how dark the results might be. So she was ready to go to that dark place. She's like, I don't care if he's dark and unnatural.
Yes. Yeah.
She just wanted to keep him tethered for whatever reason, right? Mm-hmm. Whether for her own personal selfish reasons or because she wanted to make Samuel happy. But then Samuel steps in and he says, enough, right?
Yeah. That's so my dad. No.
Right. Let nature take its course. So Samuel seizes Maria from the bed and covers her with a blanket. He stomps on the candles as if they were bugs, extinguishing the flames, then opened the window and waved the smoke out. At last, Samuel turned back to her. He wasn't often angry, but when he was, he burned. He says, is my father an experiment for your art? Maria says, it's a cure. When I cured you, your father was happy that I did. Why can't you be? So did she kind of use necromancy to
I don't think so. I think she was curing him with the Tawa tea.
Oh, right. Yes. He had that breakbone fever or whatever, right? But that wasn't fatal. He was just in a lot of pain, right?
I think it is fatal.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. He's saying this. He's saying that this is not the same. The only cure for old age is death. There are things you cannot change that you should not change. We'll let him go as he should.
Yeah.
Samuel was right, and she knew it. What was forcibly brought back from death never came back as it was. Or one lived or died as fate saw fit. It was possible to shift one's destiny depending on choices that had been made, but some things were meant to be. They had been written out and could not be unwritten. Abraham Diaz's time had come. On both hands, his lifelines had reached the ends of his palms. Maria stopped fighting a war she couldn't win. She washed and dressed, then watched Samuel from the window as he sat alone in the garden, waiting to lose the last member of his family. So Samuel, sitting alone in the garden, just waiting, just biding time at this point, waiting for his father to pass, he's accepting it. He's accepting the reality that, this is what happens. We get old, we die, and, there's nothing, no spell, no magic can stop that from happening,
Yeah. Do you think if given the choice, she would have tried to save Hannah that way?
Yeah, I feel like if she was if she was a learned witch at that, because she was still young at that point, right? Yeah. I don't think she really knew the depths of her own power. So perhaps she might have.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so moving on to Book of Magic. This starts on page 7, and this says, when the time came, if and when one of the girls teetered on the verge of falling in love, Sally would step in and put a stop to it, as she wished she had done when her sister Gillian had fallen for the man whose name was never said aloud for fear he'd be called back from the dead. That's obviously talking about Jimmy, right? But the funny thing is that there was no resurrection spell scene in book 1, but I like how Alice added this little nod to the scene bringing Jimmy back from the dead in the film, which was based on the first book. So that was very sneaky, Alice.
They're even scared to say his name.
All right, so then on page 65, she was aware that spirits could return in the form of birds to let those they left behind know they have not been forgotten, and also to remind those who love them that they must let go. Franny would be so alone, but what choice did she have? The sparrow flew through the open window to perch in one of the old magnolias, and then before anyone could blink, it was gone, as was Raphael. Yeah, I love how the birds in this passage, remember we were talking earlier in the last recording, like learning to let go, like necromancy is kind of like the opposite, like trying to hold on to something that's supposed to like naturally have its cycle and move on to the spirit world. And Franny loved birds because I guess it was a reminder for her to be able to let things go. And Jet, on the other hand, Jet held on to her grief for many, many years, and it was ultimately almost the downfall of her, right? Because she couldn't,
kind of crazy.
She had an unhealthy attachment to, she wasn't processing her grief in a healthy
She could have
way.
used Krista Rimmer.
Yes. On page 74, Vincent goes to this shop in Paris called Amulet, which has the magus behind some glass, and the clerk asks him if there's anything that he could do for him, and Vincent has a thought. He thinks, you can set back time, you can make me 20 again, you can bring William and my sister back from the dead. So he's having these thoughts of trying to bring loved ones back. And I mean, we all think it, right? We all have that unhealthy thought, like, I just want them back. All right, so then page 84. Franny receives a letter from Vincent in this excerpt, her brother who faked his own death. So this passage says, all Franny could think of was Vincent, whom she had missed terribly. She could feel the sun on her skin and the breeze from the east, her dear brother back from the dead and the disappeared, a victim of the curse, a believer in love, the person she trusted most in the world, assuring her that fate would bring them together again. Page 129. The longer it took to discover a way to end the curse, the more likely she was to lose Gideon. And this is obviously talking about Kylie. According to the Book of the Raven, her first act should be to create the sign of the Pentacle of Solomon to summon the spirit of Hecate, goddess of the crossroads and sorcery. If she did so, she would discover the direction in which she would find the knowledge she needed. Kylie lifted the fringed throw rug and used a black felt pen to sketch a pentacle on the scuffed wooden floor. She burned sage and sandalwood in the metal dustbin, herbs her aunts had given her to smudge her dorm room. Never be without these, her Aunt Jet had advised, but Kylie had stuffed the herbs into a drawer, remembering them only when she stopped at Dunster House on her way to the airport to toss her passport and a change of clothes into her backpack. Now, as the pungent smoke arose in the dingy hotel room, she stood in the center of the circle that was intended to unite the 4 sections of the world and the 4 elements. She would do whatever she must to follow the instructions set down in the Book of the Raven, although she worried about her abilities.
So, if she's in Waltham, that's a $500 fine in a hotel room, smoking it up with the sage.
Yeah.
And felt marker. Okay, what hotel room has hardwood floors? That's a nice suite.
Ooh, yeah, that's right.
She's marking it up with a Sharpie and smoking out the place.
We didn't have no wooden floors in our hotel room, right? Either time. No. I like how she's kind of resorting to this thrifty trash witchery that,
she's following in her mom's footsteps of like, well, I guess I'll use it now.
Right. So the rest of this passage, it says, she had few skills other than spying auras and telling what the weather would bring, and no reference for magic. Her mother had seen to that. Surprisingly, that had begun to change. Ever since she'd opened the first page of the Book of the Raven, she could see what was previously unseen. She could feel what she never felt before. She could view the edges of the future, which caused a strange double vision. It was the sight, the inherited ability to see what was to come, a skill that had been repressed and rejected by her mother, a talent Kylie now welcomed. Before the plane had landed at Heathrow, she'd reached the last page of the Book of the Raven. Her skin continued to blister as she touched the paper, but that didn't faze her. A practitioner of left-handed magic must not flinch or fear, so said the Raven, the writer of the book. She don't know anything, but she's just like, all right, I guess I'll
left-handed magic?
Yeah,
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so page 130. Now in her hotel room in Bayswater, so far from home and from everyone she knew and loved, thinking of Gideon, she stood in the circle and breathed in the scent of sage and sandalwood, hoping the smoke would not set off fire alarm and bring the desk clerk running. Exactly what Christina said. That's a big fine, right? She recited her vow to do what she must, cutting her hand with a corkscrew left atop a tiny foul-smelling fridge and adding her own blood to the fire. When thick beads of blood, so dark they appeared in black, spilled into the mixture, the smoke billowed a brilliant red. Kylie ran to the open window and waved her arms to disperse the crimson swirls, but the smoke would leave its mark on the ceiling, so the next guest would wonder what on earth had happened. Never knowing that in the small room, the door to left-handed magic had been flung open on an ordinary day. Yo, could you imagine if someone was just like doing left-handed magic in the hotel room that you're staying at, like right before you, like just opened a friggin' portal and you're like, all right, let's just stay here. It was here that a young woman gave herself over to the darkness, to blood and bones, to black thread and knives and ashes, to the curse that had been growing stronger for 300 years, once planted in the earth in Salem, in Waltham, Massachusetts, and now blooming here in London and inside her heart. On page 216, here's a summarized passage about a man named David Ward. He's not really a main character. I think it's just like a character that he comes across Vincent in like passing. But there's an interesting parallel between David Ward and Vincent. So while working as the keeper of the Invisible Library in London, David Ward spots a man watching him from a nearby bench. A man that he instantly recognizes as Vincent Owens, okay, the singer who had supposedly died decades ago. David had idolized Vincent, because we know Vincent was that rock star. In this excerpt, it actually mentions that the song that David had come to know Vincent through was I Walk at Night. So David had idolized Vincent in his youth, drawn to the musician's courage to live openly as himself in an era when David had concealed his own sexuality, marrying Vincent.
Yeah, I don't think he live openly. I don't think he did. I think that's why he wanted to fake his death.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I don't know, maybe he was able to be more open once he went over to Paris. Yeah. Remember he moved over to Paris? So maybe it was a little different there. But yeah, he was like kind of on this world stage. He was this well-known rock star with this hit song. So maybe in a sense, like, he had to hide things from the public eye, but maybe... you know, in his personal life.
You could probably tell through his music, like David probably could sense in the lyrics, like there was something about him.
Absolutely. So he was drawn to Vincent's courage to live that, you know, that life, his sexuality, marrying and hiding behind a false life that left him hollow. So David, he got married, right? So, but beneath his mild exterior, David carries this terrible secret. Years earlier, when his beloved daughter, Evie, was suddenly sick with meningitis, he turned to a dark practitioner of magic, one who trafficked in the crooked path, a form of black magic. In exchange for Evie's life, David agreed to commit murder.
Murder?
Murder. He poisoned a stranger's drink in a London bar, and the man actually survived, right? So though the man survived, David's daughter miraculously recovered. He knew then that he had entered a dangerous moral contract, that he had attempted to trade one life for another. So when Evie later dies in a motorcycle accident, David became convinced that fate had reclaimed what he'd stolen, that his earlier act of black magic had merely delayed his daughter's death, not prevented it. So racked with guilt, he takes refuge in the library, devoting himself to keeping magical knowledge locked away. Yet grief and obsession consumed him, and he began secretly searching for the knowledge or the hidden art of necromancy, the spell to raise the dead. He even attempted it once, and the results were horrifying. His body rejected the magic violently. He was sick for weeks, vomiting small personal belongings of his daughter, like her beads, earrings, cigarette butts, as if her essence had been forced through him, like
Witches of Eastwick style with the cherries.
Yeah. And I know like Gillian didn't burp up Jimmy's ring, but the toad burps up the ring. But remember in the movie when the toad burps up Jimmy's ring, what does Gillian do? She's holding her neck and she's coughing like she's trying to like purge something too. So he's vomiting all of his, daughter's belongings as if her essence has been forced through him, reminding him that death was not his to undo. And perhaps in the movie, Gillian having that same reaction as the frog, trying to purge something, there's a reminder to her that death was not hers to undo either. So this ordeal convinces David that necromancy is not resurrection, but contamination, a corruption of natural order that exacts its own revenge. When David sees Vincent alive, he feels both wonder and terror. Could this man truly have returned from the grave? So their conversation turns briefly to necromancy, which David calls the knowledge. Human history, he reflects, is littered with those who have tried to master it, to conquer death, and pay the price. The Vincent price.
Nice. There'll be food and drink and ghosts.
Vincent assures him he's not a revenant, but simply is in hiding, a wry echo of all that David has repressed and buried within himself. The encounter leaves David shaken, right? Because you don't see this guy for how many years,
like
and then all of a sudden
Elvis today.
He pops up sleeping on a bench somewhere. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm sure that would, freak me out too. If, how many of our favorite pop stars, rock stars have died? Could you imagine just see them sleeping on a bench in Central Park? Like, what that would freak me out, So, yes, this encounter leaves David shaken. Once again, death and magic have entwined around him, blurring reality and myth. His lifelong flirtation with necromancy, born from love, guilt, and grief, becomes a mirror for the central theme of the Book of Magic, that to defy death is to lose part of one's soul in the process. So David Ward's story, even though he's a minor character in this whole book, it reads like a cautionary tale about necromancy. Not as dark as fantasy, but as a very human temptation. Like we keep saying, like every single one of us has that thought. Like when a loved one passes, that selfish thought when
if you were given the opportunity,
would you
probably take it?
Right, exactly. So his desperate act to save his daughter blurs the moral boundary between love and hubris. In Hoffman's world, the knowledge, another name for necromancy, is both seductive and poisonous. It's the promise that death can be bargained with, that love is stronger than the natural laws that govern us. But the results of David's ritual show what Hoffman so often warns. When you try to reverse death, the universe demands payment. The vomiting of his daughter's belongings, the beads, feathers, and fragments of her life, it's grotesque, but it's symbolic. It's as if the magic forces him to internalize his sin to carry the weight of what he's done. And necromancy here isn't the act of raising the dead, it's the haunting that follows those who try. Like, look what happened in the movie. Like, they were haunted that whole entire last half of that movie because of what portal they tried to open, And this mirrors the Owens family legacy perfectly. The curse that kills the men they love, it's not just punishment, it's a reminder that love and death are bound by the same threat. Sally and Gillian's resurrection of Jimmy, Jet's communion with spirits, and David Ward's failed attempt at the knowledge, they all explore the same truth, the human refusal to let go. In the world of the Book of Magic, necromancy becomes a mirror of grief. It shows us that even the purest love can become destructive when it refuses to accept mortality. The dead don't always need to be raised. Sometimes they only need to be remembered. So I thought that was a very interesting parallel,
Absolutely. Yeah, just harkening back to what we hear Sally begging for, in the film, like, never asked you for anything. Bring him back. Like, no, you can't do that. That's not the life cycle. That's not it.
Yeah. And though Alice didn't write the resurrection scene in that first book, I like how she's taken the resurrection scene from the film and kind of giving it these threads and these parallels and like, okay, it didn't happen in the book world in the first book, but here's this guy, David, tried it, and this is what happened. There's also that passage in the Book of Magic where Gillian sees that shade in the fens. This isn't necessarily necromancy, like trying to raise spirits, but it's that brush with that liminality that kind of like is synonymous with that necromancy. This passage, Gillian looks out her window one twilight evening and glimpses a mysterious figure moving through the fens, which is called a shade. It's not quite a ghost, but a memory, perhaps caught in time, replaying like on an endless loop. Hoffman describes it as the past leaking into the present, like the back of a watch open to reveal the gears of time. A crow then circles above, which is a symbol of death and memory, following the lost girl through centuries. And that's why we think this might be Maria, right? For the first time, Gillian witnesses this overlap of worlds where history and spirit coexist in that quiet loop. What Gillian experiences here, it's not necromancy in the traditional sense. She's not summoning or controlling the dead here, but it is a necromantic moment because the veil between worlds has thinned on its own. The shade she sees is a soul trapped in repetition, a memory made visible, still walking through the fens centuries after death. In many old traditions, necromancy wasn't just about raising corpses, it was about witnessing what lingers, reading the messages that time has left behind. Gillian's vision reminds us that sometimes the world performs its own resurrection, replaying old sorrows, letting the past bleed into the present. And the crow circling overhead acts as that psychopomp, that guide between the realm, marking this as a moment of natural necromancy, not created by spell or ritual, but by the machinery of time itself turning backward for just a slight little second, at heartbeat.
Machinery of time. That's cool.
Like that, right? So on page 246, you know when they're checking into that inn that they stay at?
Yes.
So this is that passage here. So Vincent, it starts with Vincent, and he says, "I'm happy to take one of the haunted rooms." Vincent says, "I don't believe in ghosts. We're fine," Franny told Jesse. "Don't worry about us." Vincent wishes he did believe. He'd waited for William to return to him in some form for weeks after his death. He had avoided sleep. "Come back to me," he'd whispered. "Love of my life, love eternal." One night he heard a scratching and had run outside, only to find that the vines had twisted around the window ledge. Vincent had collapsed in the sandy earth, exhausted, remembering what their Aunt Isabel had told them. What comes back from the dead comes back as dark and unnatural if forced to return, brought back by necromancy and spells. All the same, Vincent was made to use magic. When he'd arrived in Paris to stay at Agnes's, he'd brought along a pure white candle to William's grave when he went to the cemetery at night. He would light it and wait till it burned down to a pool of wax, the dog Dodger at his side. And still the night remained empty and dark. He could not call up the dead. He didn't even think it was possible.
Yeah, that's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, because at that point, like, maybe William had moved on, you know? He had passed over across to the other side and didn't feel a need to no longer be earthbound, you know?
Because they're no spring chickens. Vincent at this stage in the books, and William, like, they're older guys, right? What do you think, like 70s, 60s,
yeah,
70s?
Probably, I would think so.
Which is still, like, young to me to pass away now that our, like, lifespan's so much longer. But yeah, it's like maybe William is thinking, if I give him any sort of signal, it'll just ruin him, and that's all he'll keep grasping on to, is like, I need another signal, I need more, you know?
Right. Yeah, and you're right. And if they were older at that point when William had passed away, he might have been at a point in his life where he felt like okay to go. Like, you know, he's like, I lived my life.
Goodbyes. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe he didn't feel that need to stick around. So on page 259, so in this scene, Kylie Owens is confronted by Tom Laughlin, who tempts her to cross the moral boundary between love and dark magic. Desperate to bring back Gideon, the boy she loves, and Kylie admits that she would do anything to keep him alive. Tom tells her that with magic, anything is possible. You can curse the living, you can bring back the dead, or you can even destroy love itself. And his words echo the lore of the left-handed path, the dangerous current of sorcery rooted in selfish desire and the defiance of nature's laws. As the wind rises and sparks fill the night air, Kylie's fear and longing blur into a moment of surrender. She realizes that the left-handed path is a lonely one, a road of exile and moral compromise. But her grief makes it seem worth the cost. When she finally answers Tom, her single word was anything, which becomes both a vow and a warning, the same desperate bargain that every necromancer makes when love outweighs wisdom. On page 272, this passage talks about Antonia baking the apple pie. We did a whole apples episode, right? Remember, apples were said to be the food of love, but they're also the food of the dead, of shades and spirits that went unseen. It was the fruit that could call to those who couldn't hear any other sound. We're going to talk about dumb suppers a little later on, but it's like basically a feast of the dead. And that's one of the things on like the menu list. One of the things that you can put on your dumb supper menu is apple pie. And that's what Antonia bakes here. I don't remember what she bakes the pie for. Was it to
find your sister? Bring your daughter sister home.
That's right. The same pie recipe Maria uses to bring Faith home, right?
That's right.
That's right. So page 291. And this is a summarized excerpt. So in this excerpt, they're looking for Kylie, and Franny, she makes her way into this tiny neglected yard where a single lilac bush grew. As she's peering through the window into the parlor, the glass is too cloudy to see through, but she could sense the remnants of left-handed magic. And then Vincent takes a note of 2 dead little house sparrows in the grass wrapped in twine. Vincent then has a moment where he's remembering his own brush with the left-handed path. And it says that if Franny hadn't pulled him back, anything might have happened. Like when he was younger working the left-handed path, he could have, done anything that has gone against the natural laws. Vincent says she's just a girl, he says of Kylie. She doesn't know what she's doing. You make your choices and you pay for them unless someone with a clear head stops you, Franny says grimly. She thinks she can end the curse and save that fellow of hers, Vincent says. She's got the book, so maybe she will. Our generation certainly didn't manage to remedy anything. Right? That they're like, oh, we don't know how to fucking end this curse. But Kylie, maybe she can. So just, I guess maybe let her try.
Yeah.
But I thought that passage was interesting, how it starts off with Franny finding a single lilac bush that grew. That's almost like that symbol that left-handed magic was conducted there because of what we know about Jimmy in the first book, right? His spirit, even though they didn't do the resurrection in that first book, the lilacs growing in that first book are still synonymous with the roses growing in the movie.
I wanted to say, and when we did our lilac episode, aren't they like a very funerary flower as well? And like Victorian times?
I think I remember we talked about that because they're so fragrant that they cover up the stench of the death, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Right. So I thought it was interesting that Alice decided to peep that little lilac bush in that passage just to remind us of them in the first book,
I like this line that Franny says, you make your choices and you pay for them unless someone with a clear head steps in or stops you. And it's just like, she's not condemning her grandniece for doing this. She's like, we would have done the same thing. We all make our choices, but we don't necessarily end up in the best place unless we have help, so that's why they're going to help her.
Yeah. Kylie's very lucky because she has elders who have tried this all, have failed at it time and time again.
Exactly.
Have gone through much love and loss. And unfortunately, the Owens trio, Franny, Jet, and Vincent, they had Isabel, which was great, but their own parents didn't really support their magic, So it was kind of hard to learn from their parents' mistakes when I'm sure Susanna, she had a lot to hide. She didn't want her kids knowing about her backstory, her life in Paris before them. She kind of closed the door on that. So she didn't really give them the opportunity to, I guess, reach out, be that help that they are to now Kylie and Antonia's generation, So that's all I had for Book of Magic, right? There was so much more than I had originally
That's great.
anticipated.
No, I love that. I love the finds you got.
I think we're going to stop there for now. We're going to take our break, and when we come back, we'll do our card pull, and then we're going to get down to business about all the necromancy throughout history, from ancient times all the way through to the Victorian era and modern times as we know it today. Ouija boards and all that fun stuff. Seances. We're going to talk all about it. So stay right there. I'll be right back. Hey little witches, Justina here, calling all practical magic fans and music lovers. This fall, get ready for something truly spellbinding from the Stinas. Christina and I started Magnolia Street podcast as a way to share our original music inspired by our favorite movie, Practical Magic. We've been hard at work in the recording studio since September, brewing up our 5-song debut EP, Magnolia Street Volume 1.
At the house on Magnolia Street, would you go down to Magnolia Street where the wisteria wild and the house of magic and mystery? So would you go down to Magnolia Street?
You want the inside scoop on our music and the stories behind each song? Join our Rose tier on Patreon for just $8 a month and dive into exclusive content from our songisodes. Plus, bonus content from our highly anticipated upcoming EP. On there, you'll find lyric sheets, original demos, behind-the-scenes videos from the studio, blog posts, production notes, and more. Don't miss out on the magic. Keep up to date with us on our Instagram at Magnolia Street Podcast for all of our music news and be a part of our musical journey. The Stinas are bringing practical magic to life, one song at a time, right here on Magnolia Street.
you dare to go down to Magnolia Street? Magnolia Street.
Hey, we're the Stinas, and you're listening to the Magnolia Street podcast. Okay.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to do our card pull, and not really a pull, but I did cull through my Spirit Halloween deck because we're in the height of spooky season. Halloween's only, like a week away by the time this episode comes out.
Yeah.
So I wanted to check that deck out and see if there were any cards that spoke to the themes of necromancy. And there's an actual necromancer card.
That is amazing.
Right?
And this is exactly the image I picture when I picture like a necromancer. Like,
yeah,
come from the grave, you know?
He's just doing like a graveyard rave, right?
Yeah, graveyard rave. Mm-hmm.
Graveyard rave with all the lightning in the back, and like he's summoning all the demons. Probably already did that, right? So so there is a necromancer card in the Spirit Halloween deck, illustrated by Vera Petruk. In the Spirit Halloween tarot deck, the necromancer Page of Wands card embodies themes of new beginnings, inspiration, untapped potential, and a fearless, adventurous spirit. New ideas and inspiration as the necromancer theme connects to the traditional meaning of bringing something new to life. It signifies a fresh burst of creative energy, a new project, or an exciting new opportunity that is just beginning to sprout, much like the necromancer raising a new entity. I would also see this as maybe not something new, but maybe an old project that kind of shit the bed, and then you're kind of trying to revive it at a later point. You know, how many projects have we left abandoned, and like it's just collecting dust on our to-do list, and one day you just are like, hey, I should probably revive this. This was a really good idea, you know?
Yeah.
Then there's potential and growth. The card represents potential that has not yet fully matured. The necromancer is learning to harness their power or their wand, suggesting you have the raw talent and drive to succeed, but need to develop your skills and a concrete plan before taking full action. Associated with the element of fire, this card is all about passion, spontaneity, and an eagerness for new experiences. The necromancer's work, raising the dead using dark magic, is portrayed as an exciting, curiosity-driven adventure or a new course of study in the deck's unique context. So pages are traditionally messengers in the tarot. The necromancer may signal the arrival of exciting news or information related to your passions, career, or personal growth. And the card encourages you to step out of your comfort zone, taking calculated risks, and explore new realms without fear of the unknown, embracing the spooky or unconventional path. The necromancer is a symbol of the exciting initial phase of a journey, full of potential, urging you to embrace your inner power and explore what ignites your passion. So that's the necromancer card, and then there were some other cards in this deck that could hold concepts of necromancy and raising the dead. Some of these cards are Frankenstein, which represents the Nine of Pentacles, and Frankenstein, we all know, is connected to necromancy because of his experiment to reanimate a human corpse using scientific and alchemical means, which is a form of necromancy, right? Bringing something back from the dead. The act of bringing the dead back to life. While Frankenstein used technology rather than magic, his act of stitching together body parts from corpses and giving them life mirrors the core concept of necromancy, where a practitioner raises the dead to create new beings. Interesting, when we think of Frankenstein, though, we often think of the green monster with the bolts in his head, right? But in the novel, that's actually just called the monster, right? I don't think they give him a name in the book. But Victor Frankenstein was actually the name of the scientist or the inventor who reanimates the monster.
One of my favorite sayings is, it's magic until it's science, right? So even though he's not using magic, right, in the sense that we know it, but he is.
Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of also synonymous with the magician card of the tarot, right? It's a magical person, obviously casting some kind of like spiritual spell or something, but he has access to all of the elements, and when you combine all the elements, you get that alchemy. So then, yes, it does become science eventually.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that quote. And then another card in this deck is the Mummy, which represents the Seven of Wands, and mummies and necromancy are very closely linked, particularly in fiction and folklore, where mummies are often depicted as undead creatures reanimated by necromantic magic, or as powerful entities that practice necromancy themselves. And then you have Billy Zane, right? Because
I was gonna pull him down, but I was like, she's probably sick of seeing Billy. I gotta pull him down.
We need a picture of the guy from the Mummy. What is his name?
Arnold Vosloo.
Yeah.
Next to each other?
Yeah, they're like
I have
twin
both of them.
brothers.
They are.
Right? Speaking of Billy Zane, there's a show that me and Avi are watching right now. It's based on Jack the Ripper, but it's called Ripper Slasher. It's like in the Slasher series, there's a guy in this show that he could be Billy Zane's brother.
Oh my God.
I'm like, they could have just had Billy Zane to play this part. It would have been perfect. He plays like a magician, but also a charlatan, and he hosts séances.
That sounds cool. That sounds like a good Halloween watch.
It is. It's pretty good so far. Victorian era, awesome.
Love that.
Yeah, check it out. Then another card in this deck is a ghost, which is based off the Two of Swords, and ghosts are the spirits of the deceased, and necromancy is the practice of communicating with or controlling them. Ghosts are the subjects of necromancy, which involves using magical means to summon, interrogate, or manipulate the spirits of the dead for purposes like divination or to achieve other impossible tasks. Then we have the Headless Horseman, which represents the Page of Swords. In the original folklore and Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman is a ghost or spectral entity with no explicit connection to necromancy. However, in some modern fictional adaptations, such as certain video games or TV shows, even in Tim Burton's his own version of Sleepy Hollow, necromancy has been introduced as a plot element used to summon or control the horseman, right? I think they have to steal his skull from the grave of that tree, and then whoever has the skull can control the horseman. And then lastly, another card in this deck is the King of Anubis, which represents the King of Wands. And this card signifies death, mummification, and the afterlife, representing the protector of the dead, the guide of souls, and the overseer of the embalming process. So originally considered the King of the Dead, Anubis later became the god of mummification and the guide who escorted souls to their judgment. He is symbolized by the jackal, which ancient Egyptians saw as a guardian of cemeteries, and the color black, which represents both decay and the fertile land of the Nile, symbolizing renewal.
That deck is loaded with really good ones for spooky seasons. I mean, it's a Spirit Halloween deck, but like kind of hitting the nail on the head the last couple times we've used it.
For real, yeah. It's a cool deck, beautiful illustrations. So definitely check that out if you have a Spirit Halloween nearby you in your most recently dilapidated warehouse. They just take over whatever
dilapidated warehouse.
They just take over whatever failed business. Yeah. I saw a meme of the White House turned into Spirit of Halloween. I died.
I can see that.
All right. Okay. I'm going to let you take over some etymology while I go get some water.
Tea. Okay. Yes. The word necromancy is adapted from late Latin necromancia, a loan word from the post-classical Greek necromantia, or divination through a dead body, a compound of ancient Greek nekros, or dead body, and mantia, meaning divination. The Koine Greek compound form was first documented in the writings of Origen of Alexandria in the 3rd century AD. The classical Greek term was nekia, Nekya, from the episode of the Odyssey in which Odysseus visits the realm of the dead souls, and in the Hellenistic Greek, necromantia in Latin, and necromancy in the 17th century English. So let's revisit the magus briefly. We talked about this a few episodes ago where we went chapter by chapter. We're going to do a deep dive on all the chapters, but just to touch back on some of the mentions of necromancy in the magus. Let's start with Book 2, Chapter 5, and this is of the imaginative power and the magnetism of the natural spirits. So here, necromancy first arises indirectly when Francis Barrett, drawing on Pericles and Van Helmont, discusses how the mummial attraction, the connection between spirit, blood, and body, can cause a magnetic sympathy between the living and the dead. He writes that, quote, the whole art of necromancy is founded upon the sympathy of astral spirits with their bodies. What does this mean, though? So here, necromancy isn't framed as raising the dead in a theatrical or evil sense, but as a natural process of attraction between the spirit world and the physical remnants of life, like blood and bone. Barrett argues that communication with spirits happens because their astral essence remains magnetically bound to earthly matter. Essentially, he sees necromancy as a scientific explanation of ghostly manifestations, an extension of his theory on magnetism and spirit. Then we have Book 2, Chapter 6 through 8, and this is of witchcraft, of the vital spirit, and of the magical power. So here, although necromancy isn't explicitly named, These chapters expand on its mechanics. Barrett claims that the vital spirit lingers in blood and tissue even after death, implying that necromantic phenomena occur because the remnant spirit can be reactivated by imagination, will, or magnetism, right? There's part of me, remember I shared the story of the boyfriend that haunted me?
Yeah.
And part of me thinks like the more, it's kind of like the Jimmy thing, like the more you think about it, the more you start getting paranoid, the more stuff happens.
Feeds
you know?
off of it.
Exactly. Yeah. This is a philosophical defense of natural necromancy. The magician doesn't, quote, summon demons, but awakens a natural vitality latent in matter. Barrett distinguishes this from, quote, the wicked practices of witches who call upon infernal spirits. Instead, the true philosopher only studies the law that allows spirits to interact with the body. I don't remember touching on any of this.
Neither do I, because remember we did like a very brief overview of each chapter because that book is so long and in depth. Like we'd have to do a deep dive on each chapter individually as its own episode. We would probably do that. I went back to the Magus because remember how we had the book link to the PDF, the online PDF, and I just searched like all the necromancy shit.
That's dope. Yeah, this is
I just
amazing.
pulled all it out. Yeah, because we just like briefly touched on it, but if we go down this like little rabbit hole we're going down right now, like there's actually a lot of necromancy in the Magus.
Pretty dope. Good source.
Which is like why I guess Vincent was like so drawn to that dark left-handed path because like a lot of the Magus, which was the book he was like into at that time.
Yep.
It talked
highlighted
a lot about
all
it.
that.
Right.
Yeah. So then we have book 2, chapter 18. This is on the bonds of spirit and their adjurations and castings out. So in the Kabbalah section, Barrett writes about commanding and banishing spirits, another clear reference to necromancy's ceremonial aspect. He details the hierarchy of spirits and the symbols, circles, and invocations used to constrain them. Here, necromancy is treated as more ceremonial magic, not superstition. Barrett implies that a learned magician operating in the name of divine order can lawfully compel spirits to appear or depart. This turns necromancy from blasphemy into a ritual science, essentially a fusion of theology and natural philosophy. We have next book 2, chapter 19, by the means of magicians and necromancers call forth the souls of the dead. So here, this is the most direct treatment of necromancy in the Magus. Barrett recounts how magicians throughout history have attempted to summon departed souls, explaining the threefold composition of man, which is body, vital spirit, and divine soul, and how the middle spirit may linger near the corpse or the tomb. He emphasizes that the true adept doesn't literally raise the corpse, but instead communicates with the residual spirit or astral image that remains near the material form. Barrett criticizes vulgar necromancers for using blood sacrifices or demonic pacts, calling these, quote, the operations of ignorance. His necromancy is therefore philosophical and magnetic, the art of drawing forth the echoes of consciousness that still cling to earthly forms. So across the Magus, necromancy serves as the ultimate metaphor of reanimation, both literal and spiritual. Whether through magnetism, blood, or imagination, Barrett portrays it as mankind's attempts to bridge life and death through knowledge. It's not evil. It's the pinnacle of inquiry into the invisible laws of nature. So in summary, Barrett's necromancy is magnetic and scientific, not purely supernatural. It's based on sympathy between spirit and matter, not demonic pacts, and it's theoretical, serving as a lens to understand how the soul persists after death. And the refrain through Christian mysticism, aligning divine will with natural law. And I think, haven't they done a study or an exercise of like having a person who is in the process of dying, like on a scale, and then as their soul leaves them, like they lose
lighter?
a little bit of their weight?
I've never heard of that. That's fascinating though.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. So like, does your soul have a weight? Also, it's been like not tried, but like argued that like, are you sure that wasn't just like the relieving? Like maybe, you know how when you die, like all your stuff comes out?
Yeah. Oh,
like you poop yourself and you're a little lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'd like to think, why do we still open windows when people pass over? Is because there's something there.
Yeah, you want to release their spirit, right? Let it fly free. Yeah. I've never heard of that. That's really fascinating though. Now I want to like look that up.
I know. Yeah, maybe while you're reading, I'll see if I can find that.
So moving forward, I mentioned this earlier, but I have this book called Calling the Spirits: The History of Séances by Lisa Morton that I'm going to be reading passages from. And I'll link this in our show notes, our hero page, if anybody would like to purchase this. And also, I do have like a more comprehensive reading list for further reading all about seances and the Victorian era and spiritualism movement and all of the stuff. I'll give you guys those book recommendations a little later on. But first, we're going to focus on this book. Here's a little synopsis about what this book is about. So, from Halloween expert Lisa Morton, a level-headed and entertaining history of our desire and attempts to hold conversations with the dead. Calling Spirits investigates the eerie history of our conversations with the dead, from necromancy in Homer's Odyssey to the emergence of spiritualism when Victorians were entranced by mediums and the seance was born. Among our cast are the Fox sisters, teenagers surrounded by spirit wrappings, Daniel Douglas Home, the greatest medium of all time, Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, whose unlikely friendship was forged, then riven by the afterlife, and Helen Duncan, the medium whose trial in 1944 for witchcraft proved more popular to the public than news about the war. The book also considers Ouija boards, modern psychics, and paranormal investigations, and is illustrated with engravings, fine art from beyond, and photographs. Hugely entertaining, it begs the question, is anybody there? So when we think of contacting the dead, that common image that we have in our minds has been shaped by decades of popular culture, right? The horror novels and movies have imprinted the seance with images of terror, while the Ouija board has moved from an innocent party game to a piece of occult equipment condemned by believers in a variety of religions, apparently because of its effectiveness in producing spirits.
Just reading those stories that when we got to visit the Ouija board museum in Salem, of all the like weird like murders and suicides that happened after Ouija board interactions.
Right. Yeah. If anybody's in the Salem area, you definitely have to visit the Ouija board museum and just read all those stories and plaques on the wall. Very creepy stuff. So the original form of the seance, however, before it was haunted by the specter of mass entertainment and consumerism, was a very different creature. So consider this description from an 1873 edition of the Spiritualist newspaper. So I guess maybe one of the first accounts of a spiritual seance. So this says, Mrs. Everett and Reverend F. Monk, both of them good mediums, offered to give us a sitting. So we commenced in the usual way with singing and prayer, after which the spirits chose some appropriate portions of scripture to be read. Our invisible friends then commenced giving us a series of raps in all parts of the room. Our party numbered 15, all intimate friends. So raps is like spirit.
Do I need my candelabra for this? Is this spooky music time?
It might be, because going from here on, like, there's some pretty spooky stuff we're gonna be talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. So, at the beginning of the seance, Nippy, one of Mrs. Everett's spirit friends, raised up the tablecloth from beneath with his materialized hand, and each person present felt his fingers distinctly through the cloth in the light. We then lowered the gas and sang again, when we had quite a shower of lights varying in size. We carried on a conversation with the lights, which signaled answers in the usual way, each spirit claiming some friend by the light passing toward him. 3 flashes were given quickly for a yes and 1 for a no. We next had a cool breeze laden with perfume. We commenced singing again, and Mr. Monk was lifted, chair and all, into the air, after which his boots were pulled off and thrown to the other end of the room.
Yo.
Listen, you can't fake a levitation. Unless you're David Blaine.
Yeah.
Unless you're David Blaine. He then was entranced by the spirit named Sam, who asked that an accordion, which Dr. Hitchman had brought, should be tied tightly with a string so that it could not be pulled open. It was accordionally tied with strong twine, passed about 8 times around. The spirit then played it quite melodiously on each of our shoulders, the string remaining firmly bound on it the whole time. Sam, the ghost, next asked for his medium to be bound to a chair. I'm sorry, once my ghost starts asking for me to be tied up, I'm fucking out of there. Right? 3 of our circle bound him tightly and securely, all of us examining the tying. We began to sing, and in 4 seconds the medium was released, and among us the rope was found under the sofa, tied and knotted in such an intricate way that it will take 20 minutes for an ordinary mortal to undo it. Thus ended one of the most convincing seances I ever witnessed.
That's intense.
Right? So a seance is also not, strictly speaking, necromancy. Erica Bourguignon, who prepared the entry on necromancy in the Encyclopedia of religion, says that necromancy is, quote, the art or practice of magically conjuring up the souls of the dead, and is primarily a form of divination. The principal purpose of seeking such communication with the dead is to obtain information from them, generally regarding the revelation of unknown causes or the future course of events. Bourguignon also notes that because necromancy involves magical conjuration, it does not include communication employing medium. The Catholic Encyclopedia challenges this later notion, which says, in recent times, necromancy as a distinct belief and practice reappears under the name of Spiritism or Spiritualism. However, the séance can be traced as a direct descendant of the earliest forms of necromancy, dating back to Egyptian, Babylonian, Greek, and Roman accounts. Both the necromancer and the medium employ metaphysical or magical practices, casting spells for the former, entering a trance state, or evoking spirit manifestation for the latter, to force the return of dead spirits in order to do the bidding of the caller, although the necromancer may also be summoning divine entities, including gods or demons. So first we're going to talk about some of the ancient roots of necromancy. In Calling the Spirits, Lisa Morton traces necromancy back to the ancient Mediterranean and Near Eastern worlds, where communication with the dead was both feared and revered. The word necromancy combines the Greek nekros, which means dead, and mantia, which means divination. Early necromancers sought prophecy or counsel from the spirits of the dead, believing that those beyond the grave possessed knowledge of fate and destiny. Morton references the Roman poet Lucan's account of the necromancer Erichtho, who invoked Hecate and other infernal powers to animate a corpse and compel it to speak. She says, Erichtho chooses one from the battlefield, inserts a hook into its throat, and using a rope from a gallows, drags the corpse to a rock in the mountains that looks down over a deep cavern. Once there, she fills the body with boiling blood and does a spell.
Okay.
And in the book, okay, I'm not going to read this spell because I don't want to be raising demons.
No.
But this book gives you the spell that that Erichtho does. Okay.
Cool.
So if you want to perform your own necromancy and you want to drag your corpse from the gallows and pour its body with blood, have at it.
I don't have a big enough pot for
grand
that.
old time. Right. But yeah, so I'm like, wow, this book
That's
is
intense. That's pretty cool.
very
Did you buy that
intense.
in Salem?
No, I bought this on him. I think
Okay.
I might have asked for this for Christmas one year. There's nothing like a Christmas gift just want yeah, Ma, can you just get me a book on necromancy, please?
I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Erichtho's ritual represents necromancy's dual nature, part sacred inquiry, part transgression. It marks one of the first detailed literary depictions of raising the dead for revelation. In both Greek and Roman culture, necromancy was performed in specific places like caves and crossroads. We know Hecate. We just did a whole episode on Hecate and the crossroads. Lots of raising the dead and necromancy this season, right?
Spookiness.
The spooky season. Yeah. So yeah, they did this in places like caves and crossroads and underground sanctuaries known as necromantia. So the key idea here is that in the ancient world, necromancy was not yet demonized, okay? It was a dangerous divine technology for accessing knowledge that life could not provide, but demonizing necromancy was not yet a thing until Christianity. Okay?
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise! Are we
Surprise,
going to get
surprise.
deeper into that table turn in there? Like the flip of the switch?
I think so, yeah.
Cool.
But we're not done with antiquity yet, okay? We're gonna talk a little bit more about magic in the Greco-Roman world. So early necromancy was related to, and most likely evolved from, forms of shamanism or prehistoric ritual magic that calls upon spirits such as the ghosts of deceased forebears. Classical necromancers address the dead in a, quote, mixture of high-pitched squeaking and low droning, comparable to the trance state mutterings of shamans. Necromancy was prevalent throughout antiquity, with records of its practice in ancient Egypt, Babylonia, Greece, ancient Etruria, Rome, and China. In his book Geographica, Strabo refers to necromantia, or diviners by the dead, as the foremost practitioners of divination among the people of Persia, and it is believed to have also been widespread among the peoples of, here's that word again, Chaldea. The Chaldeans, particularly to the Hermeticists or star worshippers, and Babylonia. The Babylonian necromancers were called Manzazu or Sha-etemu, and the spirits they raised were called Etemu. Traditional Chinese folk religion involves necromancy in seeking blessing from dead ancestors through ritual displays of filial piety. The oldest literary account of necromancy is found in Homer's Odyssey. Under the direction of Circe, a powerful sorceress, Odysseus travels to the underworld, Catabasis, in order to gain insight about his impending voyage home by raising the spirits of the dead through the use of spells which Circe has taught him. He wishes to invoke the question of the shade of Tiresias in particular. However, he is unable to summon the seer's spirit without the assistance of others. The Odyssey's passage contains many descriptive references to necromantic rituals. Rites must be performed around a pit with fire during nocturnal hours, and Odysseus has to follow a specific recipe which includes the blood sacrifice of animals to concoct a libation for the ghosts to drink while he recites prayers to both the ghosts and the god of the underworld. Very specific, okay? Very specific stuff. Practices such as these, varying from the mundane to the grotesque, were commonly associated with necromancy. Rituals could be quite elaborate, involving magic circles, wands, talismans, and incantations. The necromancer might also surround himself with morbid aspects of death, which often include wearing the deceased's clothing and consuming foods that symbolize lifelessness and decay, such as unleavened black bread and unfermented grape juice. Gross. Some necromancers even went so far as to take part in the mutilation and consumption of corpses, so cannibalism, right? Eating dead people. These ceremonies could carry on for hours, days, or even weeks leading up to the eventual summoning of spirits. Frequently, they were performed in places of internment or other melancholy venues that suited specific guidelines of the necromancer. Additionally, necromancers prefer to summon the recently departed based on the premise that their revelations were spoken more clearly. This time frame was usually limited to the 12 months following the death of the physical body. Once this period elapsed, necromancers would evoke the deceased ghostly spirit instead. While some cultures consider the knowledge of the dead to be unlimited, ancient Greeks and Romans believed that individual shades knew only certain things. The apparent value of their counsel may have been based on the things they knew in life or knowledge they had acquired after death. Ovid writes in his Metamorphosis of a marketplace in the underworld where the dead convene to exchange news and gossip. The oldest mentions of necromancy date from Mesopotamia, where a 2nd millennium BC list of professions, a group of tablets known as Lu, L-U, includes 2 terms for necromancer. While Lu excerpt number 2 mentions a female necromancer, an old Assyrian letter makes notes of female diviners and spirits. A partial tablet from the collection of the British Museum dates from the 1st millennium BC and includes, in Babylonian script, an incantation for summoning a ghost. The ritual includes placing a skull on the ground and ordering the spirit to enter the skull. There's a whole incantation. It says, "I call upon you, O skull of skulls, may he who is within the skull answer me." And then a potion made from animal parts is left to stand overnight and then used to anoint the skull, although this latter action is unclear. Another tablet contains a spell for creating an ointment that is applied to the eyes, which then enables the one thus anointed to see and speak with ghosts. Other tablets feature incantations for protection against raised spirits, since encounters with ghosts usually resulted in death. The Babylonian Talmud also mentions those who consult with skulls, and a medieval commentary from 1450 by Bar Tanura notes, quote, "He takes the skull of a dead person after the flesh has decomposed, and he offers incense to it and asks of it the future, and it answers." So necromancy, it seems like this was prohibited among the Israelites. There are several references to necromancers called, quote, bone conjurers among Jews of the later Hellenistic period in the Bible. The book of Deuteronomy explicitly warns the Israelites against engaging in the Canaanite practice of divination from the dead. So this is the quote, I guess, from that book. It says, "When thou art come into the land which the Lord," should we do this? Like, "When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do according to the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, who useth divination, or an observer of times, an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. That's a long list. That's a long list of people. For all those who do these things are an abomination unto the Lord, and because of these abominations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee.
I'm surprised this quote doesn't get used more than the other one that gets thrown at us a lot, like the "thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Like, where's this one been? This one's way better.
Right. This is a deep cut, it seems like. Deep cut here.
Got the details.
So though Mosaic law prescribed the death penalty to practitioners of necromancy in Leviticus 20:27, this warning was not always heeded. One of the foremost examples is when King Saul had the witch of Endor invoke the spirit of Samuel, a judge and prophet from Sheol, to divine the outcome of a coming battle. However, the so-called witch was shocked at the presence of a familiar spirit in the image of Samuel, for in 1 Sam 28:7 states, "Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor." And in Sam 28:12 says, "When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out in a loud voice. And the familiar spirit questioned his reawakening, asking as if he were Samuel the prophet, 'Why hast thou disquieted me?' Saul died the next day in combat, with Chronicles 10:13 implying this was due to the prohibition against necromancy."
By the medieval era, necromancy had shifted from temple rites to taboo. Oh, here it is. I didn't know we were coming up on that so quickly.
Yeah, that's quick. Yeah, I kind of tried to outline it and like keep it kind of short because, like I said, there's so much in this book that I wanted to include, but we will literally be here all fucking day.
That's fine. Yeah, go get your hands on this book. It sounds fascinating.
It is.
This says church fathers condemned it as heresy, but fascination persisted among scholars, alchemists, and clergy who practiced in secret. Medieval grimoires such as the Key of Solomon and the Libra Juratus blended Christian prayers with pagan conjurations of spirits. Necromancy became associated with summoning demons. I'm going to load it up today because this is the end of our season next week, and I think we deserve it.
I think we're allowed.
It's spooky season. Rather than ancestors. Okay, yes. So they're like, okay, you're doing this not to communion with your ancestors. Y'all are summoning demons. Yep. In linguistic and moral distortion, that changed its cultural meaning. Practitioners were once accused of goetia, the lowest form of magic, sorcery done for power or vengeance rather than enlightenment. Morton notes that necromancy's continued survival reflected the human's refusal to accept the finality of death, even in an age dominated by theology. Necromancy endures because it answers an emotional need, the longing to make grief bearable, even at the risk of damnation. So many medieval writers believe that the actual resurrection required the assistance of God. They saw the practice of necromancy as conjuring demons who took the appearance of spirits. The practice became known explicitly as maleficium, and the Catholic Church condemned it. Though the practitioners of necromancy were linked by many common threads, there's no evidence that these necromancers ever organized a group. One noted commonality among practitioners of necromancy was usually the utilization of certain toxic and hallucinogenic plants from the nightshade family, such as black henbane, jimsonweed, belladonna, or mandrake, usually in magical salves and potions. We've covered almost all of those.
The only thing we haven't done is black henbane.
Right, let's do it. Next season 4.
There we go.
Medieval necromancy is believed to be the synthesis of astral magic derived from Arabic influences and exorcisms derived from Christian and Jewish teachings. Arabic influences are evident in rituals that involve the moon phases, sun placement, day and time. Fumigation and the act of burying images are also found in both astral magic and necromancy. Christian and Jewish influences appear in the symbols and in the conjuration formulas used in summoning rituals. Practitioners were often members of Christian clergy, though some non-clerical practitioners are recorded. In some instances, mere apprentices or those ordained to lower orders dabbled in the practice. They are connected by belief in the manipulation of spiritual beings, especially demons, in magical practices. These practitioners were almost always literate and well-educated. Most possessed basic knowledge of exorcisms and had access to texts of astrology and demonology. Clerical training was informal and university-based education was rare. Most were trained under apprenticeships and were expected to have basic knowledge of Latin, ritual, and doctrine. This education was not always linked to spiritual guidance, and seminaries were almost non-existent. These situations allowed some aspiring clerics to combine Christian rites with occult practices despite the condemnation condemnation in Christian doctrine. Medieval practitioners believed they could accomplish three things with necromancy: will manipulation, illusions, and knowledge. As far as will manipulation, this affects the mind and will of another person, animal, or spirit. Demons are summoned to cause various afflictions on others, quote, to drive them mad, to inflame them, to love or hatred, to gain their favor, or to constrain them to do or not do some deeds. Illusion involved reanimation of the dead or conjuring food, entertainment, and mode of transportation. Okay, so you know the story in the Bible where Jesus multiplies the loaves and the fishes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he's doing the biggest illusion.
Well, we know Jesus was the
OG
biggest necromancer, right?
Yeah. Knowledge is allegedly discovered when demons provide information about various things. This might involve identifying criminals, finding items, or revealing future events. The act of performing medieval necromancy usually involved magical circles, conjurations, and sacrifices, such as those shown in the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. Here, circles are usually traced on the ground, though cloth or parchment are sometimes used. Various objects, shapes, symbols, and letters may be drawn or placed within that represent a mixture of Christian and occult ideas. Circles are usually believed to empower and protect that was constrained within, including protecting the necromancer from the conjured demons. A text known as the Heptameron explains the function of the circle thusly. But because the greatest power is attributed to the circles, for they are certain fortresses to defend the operators safe from the evil spirits. Conjuration is the method of communicating with the demons to have them enter the physical world. It usually employs the power of special words and stances to call out the demons, and often incorporated the use of Christian prayers or biblical verses. These conjurations may be repeated in succession or repeated to different directions until the summoning is complete. Sacrifice was the payment for the summoning. Though it may involve the flesh of a human being or an animal, it could sometimes be as simple as offering a certain object. Instructions for obtaining these items were usually very specific, as we've learned. The time, location, and method of gathering items for sacrifice could also play an important role in the ritual. Like when we learned about harvesting the mandrake, that was very specific.
That was very specific, yeah.
Yeah. The rare confessions of those accused of necromancy suggest that there were a range of spells, castings, and related magical experimentation. It is difficult to determine if the details were due to their practices as opposed to the whims of their interrogators. John of Salisbury is one of the first examples related by Richard Kuykefer, but as a Parisian ecclesiastical court record shown in 1323, this shows, quote, a group who were plotting to invoke the demon Berich from inside a circle made from strips of cat skin were obviously participating in what the church would define as necromancy. Herbert Stanley Redgrove claims necromancy as one of the three chief branches of medieval ceremonial magic, alongside black magic and white magic. This does not correspond to contemporary classifications, which often conflate, quote, nigromancy, which is black knowledge, with necromancy, death knowledge. Interesting.
So in the wake of inconsistencies of judgment, necromancers and other practitioners of the magic arts were able to utilize spells featuring holy names with impunity, as any biblical references in such rituals could be construed as prayers rather than spells. As a consequence, the necromancy that appears in the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic is an evolution of these theoretical understandings. It has been suggested that the authors of the manual knowingly designed the book to be in discord with ecclesiastical law. The main recipe employed throughout the manual used the same religious language and names of power alongside demonic names. An understanding of the names of God derived from apocryphal texts and the Hebrew Torah required that the author of such rites have at least a casual familiarity with these sources. Within the tales related in occult manuals are found connections with stories from other cultures' literary traditions. For instance, the ceremony for conjuring a horse thief. A horse closely relates to the Arabic 1001 Nights and French romances. Chaucer's The Squire's Tale also bears marked similarities. This becomes a parallel evolution of spells to foreign gods or daemons that were once acceptable and frames them into new Christian context, albeit demonic and forbidden. As the material for these manuals was apparently derived from scholarly, magical, and religious texts from a variety of sources in many languages, the scholars who studied these texts likely manufactured their own aggregate sourcebook and manual with which to work spells or magic, like the Magus?
Like the Magus.
Like the Magus? In the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, it is stated that, quote, of all human opinions that is to be reputed the most foolish which deals with the belief in necromancy, the sister of alchemy, which gives birth to simple and natural things. I like that Da Vinci considered necromancy the sister of alchemy. That is really freaking cool. So in this book, Morton calls the Victorian era the Great Resurrection of the Dead. As modern science advanced, so too did curiosity about unseen worlds. We're going to talk about the Fox sisters. In 1848, the Fox sisters of Hydesville, New York, they ignited a global spiritualist movement when mysterious raps in their home were interpreted as spirit communication. Then we're going to talk about séances sweeping through Europe and America, becoming fixtures of parlor life, and then technological advances like the telegraph, photography. We've talked about spirit photography on here before, right?
Yeah.
With our daguerreotypes episode. And then later on, electricity, which reshapes how people imagine communication. If invisible signals could cross great distances, why not the veil of death? And then séances blurred the line between science and mysticism. Instruments like spirit trumpets, slate writing, ectoplasmic manifestations, and the Ouija board, right? It merged performance with belief. Spiritualism also empowered women. Many of the most famous mediums were female, giving them rare authority into a patriarchal society. The seance transformed necromancy from an occult ritual into a domestic ritual, and kind of like a novelty, if you want to say. Like these parlor games were like a huge thing in the Victorian era, right?
Yeah.
Like, you ever hear the phrase, "They like my little parlor trick"? Like, because that's what seances were. Like, were they real? Were they fake? They could be parlor tricks. The word charlatan was big back in the day, trying to prove people wrong, which we're going to talk about the relationship between Harry Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Like, Harry Houdini was a stage guy, right? He was smoke and mirrors. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle saw Houdini do these things and he's like, "You're magical as fuck. That shit's real." And like they had a falling out over whether seances and contacting the dead, whether this was real or not.
Right.
Like, they ended their friendship over this.
You're magical as fuck.
You're magical as fuck, bro. Yeah.
We did have a request. I told you my cousin was listening to our episodes, which I was like, super nice. You don't have to do that, but thank you.
Oh my God.
She suggested, hey, could you put like all your spooky topics in a playlist? I said, yes, we can. That is perfect for spooky season. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Let's, definitely let's do that. The key idea here, the seance transformed necromancy into that, from an occult ritual into a more domestic ritual. Death became something that could be approached and even negotiated with in one's own living room. And that was the height of the Victorian era, which we're going to get into now. And that's our favorite era. I think we can both agree, me and you, Christina, that the Victorian era, we're just so fascinated by this time period. So much was happening.
There's a little old Victorian woman that lives in Justina somewhere.
in my piano.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. So necromancy in the Victorian era was primarily practiced through the spiritualism movement, which shifted focus from raising physical bodies, right, which is what they did in the ancient era, to communicating with spirits of the deceased. Fueled by high mortality rates because of all the fucking dangerous shit in their homes, right down to their wallpaper, to their book covers, the Shields green, will get ya.
Their makeup, their outfits, it'll get you. Yeah, the exploding toilets.
Going to the kitchen for a sandwich and then boom, it'll get ya. Yeah. So the Victorians, unfortunately, this was a scary ass time to fucking live through. The mortality rates were high as fuck. Grief and crisis of faith. Spiritualism became a popular cultural phenomenon involving seances with mediums, ghost stories, and attempts to contact loved ones like Queen Victoria, who tried to contact her husband, Prince Albert. While this was a more socially acceptable form of necromancy than its historical, more grotesque practices, the interest in communing with the dead permeated all levels of society. A response to grief and uncertainty, like the high mortality rates, meant that families experienced profound loss, and spiritualism offered them a way to maintain connection with the deceased in a time when religious certainty was declining. There were séances and mediums. This movement centered on mediums who claimed to facilitate communication between the living and the dead through séances, often involving rituals like table turning, the spirit rapping, like the knocking and stuff like that. Popularity across social classes, the craze was widespread, with people from all walks of life, including prominent figures like Mark Twain, Frederick Douglass, we said Queen Victoria herself, participated in or at least attending these spiritualist events. Now, shifting from historical necromancy, from the physical to the spiritual, unlike earlier forms of necromancy, the Victorian era's interest was less about the grotesque rituals of like reanimating physical bodies, and it was more so now about conversing with ghosts and spirits and just reaching the other side, right? Just opening the line of communication. The introduction of cremation in the 19th century, it made the reanimation of a physical body impossible, pushing the focus toward contacting the spiritual essence of the deceased. Because I guess once the corpse was burned and made to ash, they could no longer reanimate something.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Right, exactly. So now they would have to just rely on being able to connect with that corpse's soul. Talking about modern legacy, modern practices like using a Ouija board can be seen more as a contemporary evolution of this divinatory necromancy. And there's other tools that, we can use to connect with the dead now.
Oh my God.
You can use anything.
Zach
right?
Bagans?
You can use anything. Zach Bagans, yeah. You can use a Ouija board, but you can use a pendulum maybe. You can use tarot cards. Like people use all sorts of things to connect with
on your phone you can download
right.
and fuck with.
Exactly. Yeah. Some literary and artistic themes. The fascination with death and the afterlife was reflected in popular culture with numerous books on spiritualism, which were published, and ghost stories during this era were becoming a very popular genre. I thrifted a book I think a year ago. I haven't read anything from it yet, but maybe we could read some stories for our season finale from it.
Good.
It's called Victorian Ghost Stories.
Love it.
Yeah. So definitely got to read some stuff from that for this podcast. So yeah, these ghost stories from this Victorian era were becoming a huge popularity. And then there was the obsession with death, right? This time period saw a morbid fascination with death, marked by the rise of elaborate mourning rituals and the building of grand new cemeteries, indicating a cultural struggle with mortality. And we even talked about the daguerreotypes of how people would take deceased photos of their family members to preserve their memories, right?
Yeah, I think science too was coming so far, and colleges were booming with students who you could watch dissection of humans, and you could view autopsies being done in window fronts. Right. You know what I mean? So people were just fascinated with what's going on inside the human body.
And what about our Essex Witches episode when we talked about the grave robbing? Grave robbing around this time was a big thing because, like you said, autopsies were on the rise and they needed bodies. Yeah. They needed bodies to...
Bodies were money.
Exactly, to conduct these autopsies in the name of science, though illegal, right? It's still illegal, but they were but science, bro.
Yeah.
So that was also a big thing, was the whole grave robbing.
It's such a fascinating era, for
It
sure.
really is. Okay, so now let's talk about the Fox sisters, because these girls were they were the birth of spiritualism, okay? So this all goes down in 1848. Margaretta, also known as Maggie, and Catherine, also known as Kate, last name Fox, two young sisters living with their family in Hydesville, New York, claimed that mysterious, quote, rappings in their home were messages from a spirit. They devised a simple code, knocks for yes or no, and convinced their older sister Leah and the local community that they could communicate with the dead. Their performances quickly spread beyond their farmhouse. Under Leah's management, the sisters began holding public demonstrations, most famously at Corinthian Hall in Rochester in 1849, the first paid séance in American history.
Damn.
So the event drew national attention and effectively launched the spiritualist movement, which would dominate mid-19th century popular culture. As word spread, Kate and Maggie became celebrity mediums, performing séances for curious sitters, wealthy patrons, and even prominent cultural figures like Horace Greeley, Sojourner Truth, Nathaniel Parker Willis, and William Lloyd Garrison. Early séances were often lighthearted, with audiences asking about love affairs or financial adventures, but they also tapped into the grief and uncertainty of a rapidly changing world. Skeptics, however, soon suspected fraud, like charlatans, right? Investigators and scientists, including physicians, clergy, and professors, determined that the mysterious raps were produced by the sisters, cracking the joints of their toes, knees, and ankles. As early as 1851, relatives and observers admitted to helping them create the effects, and numerous tests confirmed the sounds stopped when the girls' feet were cushioned. Despite these exposures, spiritualism continued to flourish, attracting believers and skeptics alike. In 1888, Margareta publicly confessed in front of 2,000 people at the New York Academy of Music, demonstrating how she produced the spirit raps.
Charlatan.
So she kind of like pulled back the curtain on her own shit and was like, guys, it's all a lie. Like,
This has gone too far.
Yeah. I mean, I made my millions. I'm good now, so I guess
Here's
I'll just
how
tell
you do it.
Yeah, exactly. So doctors verified the sound came from her toe joints. Her confession was widely published in the New York World, but by then, spiritualism had already become a movement far larger than its founders. Even her later recantation in 1889, likely due to financial pressure and isolation, could not undo its cultural momentum, okay? She like, Pandora's box was open at this point.
Exactly.
And people are like, oh, you said your shit was fake, but we're gonna run with this anyway. Like, you know, there's gotta be a connection to the other side. There's just gotta be. So after the sisters' deaths, the Hydesville house gained renewed attention when bones were, quote, discovered in the cellar in 1904. Allegedly, those of a murdered peddler said to have haunted the family. Their remains were later shown to include animal bones, almost certainly planted as part of the ongoing legend. So some key takeaways here. So the Fox sisters transformed necromancy and communication with the dead from occult ritual into public spectacle, right? Now it's no longer a parlor game. It's no longer just a living room novelty. Like, now this is a public spectacle, and this has taken on a whole life of its own, right? It formed a whole movement. Their 1848 Hydesville rappings marked the birth of modern spiritualism, which merged belief, entertainment, and social reform. Even after exposure and confession, the idea that the living could contact the dead proved too powerful to just vanish, right? They can't just like come out and dispel all the shit that they made up and then expect it to just people be like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, really.
Like, it shaped the next century of seances, psychical research, and mediumship. And their story illustrates one of history's greatest paradoxes, a hoax that created a genuine movement rooted in humanity's enduring need to believe that death is not the end. So they started this whole shebang, right? Then from then on, like, we are getting like these other accounts of different spiritualists and mediums that have their own like instances and like aura of mystery, air of mystery surrounding them.
Right.
We have Emma Frances Jay, who was the first significant trance medium. Unlike physical mediums who call on spirits to produce effects like levitation or rappings, trance mediums allowed the deceased to speak directly through them. Like, how many movies that you see where the medium is like overtaken by the ghost and their eyeballs roll back and so you can only see the whites of their eyes, right?
Right.
So they're actually possessed by these spirits to speak through them. So Jay was often acclaimed for her vocal skills. Miss J's mediumship consisted of speaking with extraordinary eloquence on metaphysical subjects. She also concluded her addresses by singing, both words and music being improvisations of remarkable beauty and sweetness. After a few months in England, Miss J returned to America, married, and apparently discontinued her mediumship. I'm sure there's a lot about her backstory. If you guys want to go read about that, I'll find her wiki page and I'm sure we could find more information. There's a lot of, spiritualists throughout this movement, so I'm trying to kind of pinpoint each one.
Yeah,
quickly. Next we have James L. Scott. In America, a community composed entirely of spiritualists was set up in Mountain Cove, Virginia in 1850. A Baptist minister named James L. Scott had claimed previously to have communicated with the Apostle Paul via a medium, Mrs. Benedict. However, Scott soon began to receive his own direct messages. So this spirit just slid into his DMs, okay? So following these visions, Scott led a colony of 100 believers to purchase 10,000 acres of land in rural Virginia. The specific area was chosen when the spirits knocked on the window of the carriage in which Scott was traveling. Scott and his followers produced publications with titles like Disclosures from the Interior and Superior Care for Mortals, an attempt to, I guess, proselytize the good word of spirit rappings. This guy basically, I guess, he profited off of... He had people purchasing 10,000 acres of land.
Goddamn.
It sounds like a cult, right?
Okay.
Sounds more like a cult to me. I don't know. So this next, quote, necromancer is very interesting, as I found some parallels between him and our very own Vincent Owens, okay?
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to read you his backstory first, and then we could chat about these parallels. I think Alice was doing her research about this spiritualist movement, and
how is she so smart?
Right, exactly. So, Daniel Douglas Home, also known as the gentleman medium, okay? He was one of the most famous and controversial spiritualist mediums of the 19th century. Born to a poor Scottish family in Edinburgh and adopted by his aunt, he emigrated to America at age 9. That's his last name. Home claimed psychic powers since infancy, saying that spirits rocked his cradle and that his mother possessed second sight. So after the rise of the Fox sisters, who we just talked about in the 1850s, Home began experiencing similar phenomena, mysterious knockings, furniture moving, and spiritual manifestations, or quote, manifestations, right? His deeply religious aunt accused him of consorting with the devil, but Home insisted his powers came from God. Word spread, and by his late teens, he was giving séances throughout New England, where attendees witnessed trance states, spirit voices, physical phenomena such as levitating tables, and moving objects. One early and well-documented séance involved S.B. Britton, editor of the Spiritual Telegraph. During an unplanned sitting, Home entered a trance and channeled a tormented spirit named Hannah Britton. The vivid emotional episode, complete with moaning, prayer, and apparent possession, convinced Britain that the spirit world was real. By 1855, Home had sailed to England, where he quickly became the darling of European high society. Kings, queens, and emperors sought him out. Newspapers reported his seance with Napoleon III at the Tuileries Palace, where Home allegedly stopped a clock on command, and the emperor ordered it left frozen at that hour. Home's fame, however, came with a scandal. He often left cities abruptly, Paris, St. Petersburg, and elsewhere, under mysterious circumstances. In Russia, he was accused of stealing a noblewoman's emeralds during a seance, found, quote, rematerialized in his coat pocket. Some historians suggest his sudden departures may have also been tied to his ambiguous sexuality, as Home was rumored to have close, sometimes relationships with wealthy male patrons. Despite such controversies, Home's abilities, levitation, fire handling, music.
That's levitation, Holmes.
That's levitation. Levitation Holmes, because his last name is Holmes. Yo, is that what Jack Black really meant?
Is that what he meant? That's so funny.
So yeah, it's levitation, Holmes, and then also fire handling and musical manifestations. Okay, you get where you picking up what I'm putting down here? Yeah. He even was able to elongate his body, and this made him the most celebrated medium of his time. Unlike the Davenport brothers or other showmen, Home never charged any fees, which helped sustain his aura of sincerity, because
good for him.
Charlatans were known as frauds because they just wanted people's money, right?
Right.
But if he was doing this for no cost and he just enjoyed the art of the spectacle, maybe there was some truth to what he was doing, that's what I guess what he assumed people would believe. Yet skeptics did accuse him of deception and illusion, while believers revered him as a man truly touched by the divine. By the end of his life, his fame had faded and he died quietly, his legacy legacy suspended between miracle and performance. So here are some of the parallels that I was seeing between Daniel Douglas Home and Vincent Owens, okay? So there's kind of echoes between the both of them, and they are very uncanny, almost archetypal, right? So first of all, we have the theme of musicality and spiritual sensitivity, right? With Home, spirits played musical instruments in his seances. He often accompanied them with hymns or singing, claiming the music came from the beyond. Vincent Owens, we know him as a musician whose songs are haunted both by his own melancholy and by the ancestral magic of the Owens line. His music channels emotion like a form of invocation. Then the theme of magnetism and celebrity, right? Home captivated royalty and artists across Europe, and seances became elite social events. With Vincent Owens, his fame as a musician draws people in with almost that supernatural charisma. Both men's talents blur art and the occult. And then we have the ambiguous sexuality, right? With Home, rumors of romantic relationships with male patrons, often taken in by older wealthy men who admired him. Vincent is canonically, right, in the Rules of Magic and the Book of Magic, canonically bisexual. He does have this magnetic pull to both men and women, although ultimately he fell in love with a man, right? Mm-hmm. His fluidity mirrors Home's rumored private life. Then we have the Paris connection. With Home, Paris was the height of his fame and the site of a mysterious scandal that forced him to flee, like on a whim, mysteriously flee. In the Book of Magic, Vincent's story is also marked by that Parisian symbolism, beauty, secrecy, and that thin veil between art and sin. And also Vincent also fled, right? He fled to Paris to escape his, I guess, the first fate that he had, right?
Yeah.
So there's that Paris connection as well. And then we have the themes of falling out of favor or disappearance. Home faded into obscurity and his reputation divided between believers and skeptics. Vincent's legacy, too, is also shadowed. Remember as a mythic figure by his fans, right? His adoring fans who just loved his music. Possibly dead, possibly transcendent, but he's kind of hovering between fame and that ghosthood. And then, obviously, lastly, there's those necromantic undertones. Home seances evoke the dead in ways that bordered on necromancy, yet he framed them as divine communion. In the Practical Magic series, Vincent's spectral presence in the Book of Magic, glimpsed decades after his death, makes him a literal spirit return from the grave.
We gotta ask Alice if she's ever heard of this Daniel Douglas Home.
Right, because
and if she says no, we gotta send her this table that you put together of the similarities, because I think she'd like this.
Right, because if she didn't do her research on this, and this is purely unintentional.
What are the odds? Yeah.
What are the odds of there being this many parallels between this guy Home and Vincent, right? It just blew my mind. I was like, what?
I liked it. That's amazing.
Yeah. So Home's greatest feats, this is very, very interesting, okay? So Home's greatest feat occurred in 1871 and is often referred to as the, quote, Ashley House levitation. It's levitation, Holmes. The most famous description of this feat was provided by Lord Lindsay to the Spiritualist, but it was so extraordinary that it ended up being reported throughout England in major newspapers. In the letter to the Spiritualist, Lord Lindsay describes a meeting that took place with Home, during which Lord Adair and a cousin of his were also present. This was written, I think this was what was written in the Spiritualist, I guess the paper. So it says, during the sitting, Mr. Home went into a trance, and in that state was carried out of the room next to where we were, and was brought in at our window. The distance between the windows was about 7 foot 6 inches, and there was not the slightest foothold between them, nor was there more than a 12-inch projection to each window, which served as a ledge to put flowers on. We heard the window in the next room lifted up, and almost immediately after, we saw Home floating in the air outside our window. The moon was shining full into the room. My back was to the light, and I saw the shadow on the wall above it. He remained in this position a few seconds, then raised the window and glided into the room, feet foremost, and sat down. Lord Adair then went into the next room to look at the window from which he had been carried. It was raised about 18 inches, and he expressed his wonder how Mr. Home had been taken through so narrow an aperture. Home said, mind you, he was still in a trance at this point, so let me put on my best trance medium voice.
Okay.
I will show you. And then with his back to the window. Oh wait, no, that's all he said. I will show you. That's all he said. He just said, I will show you. And then with his back to the window, he leaned back, and was shot out of the aperture headfirst with the body rigid and then returned quite quietly.
What?
Isn't that insane?
Oh my God.
So the window is about 70 feet from the ground. And this person who's giving this account says, I very much doubt whether any skillful tightrope dancer would like to attempt a feat of this description, where the only means of crossing would be by a perilous leap or being borne across in such a manner as I have described, placing the question of the light aside. So,
70 feet? Isn't that like 7 stories?
That's crazy.
That's insane. Yeah. I just picture the movie What We Do in the Shadows when the young guy gets turned and he comes through the window like feet first, but he's like struggling to get in. Twilight. Yeah. The next person I wanted to mention, we brought up in the last episode, is Sarah Winchester, just because of her immense tie to spiritualism. She actually had a seance room specifically made for this. And just like to quick recap, she was the heiress to the Winchester repeating rifle company. And so she had lots of money, but she endured the loss of her husband and her daughter. And she thought she was being haunted. So a medium suggested, build this house, build this house. So one of the rooms in this house is a seance room. Along with this room, this house is 24,000 square feet. It has 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 160 rooms, 52 skylights, 47 stairways and fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens.
That seems a little excessive.
Right. Which at the time in 1923 was built at a price tag of $5 million, which today is around $71 million.
Like, what were the property taxes on that thing back in the day, you know?
I don't know. I mean, it was just a farmhouse when she started. So
right, and now
probably grandfathered in.
It's like a historical landmark. Like,
correct.
I'm sure, I don't know, do historical landmarks, I'm sure they still have to pay property taxes too.
Yeah. But I don't know if it's because it's a historical location, they get a specific tax bracket break. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like wondering, like, how are they still able to keep this thing like standing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Wild.
This seance room is not what I picture a seance room to be, like velvet damask tapestries and like cozy, comfy. It's on like the second or third floor. Okay. It's like tan and the trim's like a muted teal color. It's got like laminate floors. It's pretty bright. I think there's like one window. But so I took this just from the WinchesterMysteryHouse.com. This says, what may consider to be the heart of the mansion is the seance room. And the seance room was once a very private and off-limits room to everybody but Sarah Winchester herself. Legend says that nearby residents heard the bell tower, which is located just outside the seance room, at midnight and then again at 2. So they could hear the ringing of this bell. And this was said to summon and release the spirits that she communicated with that night. Creepy. There is only one entrance into this room, but there are 3 exits. One exit is through the entrance door. Another leads to an 8-foot drop into the kitchen below. And the final one is a door that resembles a secret passage. So it kind of is like camouflaged, like a closet door, which is really, really fucking cool.
All right, because that's not a liability, though. Like, you go to the seance and then you go to you're trying to get to the kitchen, you just fall fucking 8 feet down? Like, what?
I think these were private. I don't think she would. I think maybe she had a medium like early on, but it sounds like this was just her communicating. Yeah.
Yo, did you ever see the movie with Helen Mirren? I think
we did.
Mirren, right?
Yeah.
So good. So good.
Yeah. That's one of those where she's possessed, right?
Yeah.
And you can kind of do the eyeball rolly back thing. When I was telling my mom about this house, she did her Googling. She was like, oh, they made a movie with Helen Mirren. I was like, watch a documentary. And if you want to watch that one, go ahead, because it's not so much about the house. But this house is a beautiful mystery. Even before Sarah's passing, rumors of a mystery house being built by an eccentric and wealthy woman swirled. Was she instructed to build this home by a psychic? Was she haunted by the ghosts of those who fell by, quote, the gun that won the West? The construction truly never stopped? what motivated a well-educated socialite to cut herself off from the rest of the world and focus solely on building the world's most beautiful yet bizarre mansion. Whether she was driven by grief, guilt, or something more unknowable, she continued expanding her home without a master plan. She just decided the next day, I need this here, I need this here. And what she left behind was this sprawling labyrinth, beautifully full of mystery and legend. I just am obsessed with this fucking house. It's so beautiful. I wanted to share just a little bit about her.
That's really cool. If only like she could build us the practical magic house. It'd be really great.
That'd be great, Sarah.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Right. Like to have that much money to just be like, yeah, I guess I'll just add another room today. Let's just do it.
Right.
Like, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
It used to be more stories, and then there was an earthquake, which like trapped her in her room. This place is fascinating. So they never really rebuilt to this vertical scale, but kept building out after that earthquake.
Yeah. There's even staircases that go to ceilings and like go to nowhere. Like
go to nowhere. Yeah.
Dead ends.
Yeah.
For days.
Doors that open and nothing, doors that open and drop. I love the idea of all of the skylights, like you could just see, you know, through the floors all the way up. And like some of the bathrooms, the doors have glass to them. So you can like see into the bathrooms. It's just crazy.
Did you see? Oh, God.
Loved spider webs. And the number 13. So that motif is throughout the house, everywhere.
That's wild.
It's so cool.
I was going to ask you, did you see Christine McConnell did a whole gingerbread recreation of the Winchester house?
Yeah.
For the Winchester house.
I did. I showed that to my mom when she was here.
Yeah.
I love
is that what you showed her?
Yeah,
she did like a whole commission piece for them, and it was displayed there for I don't know how long, but it's on our YouTube channel. It's so cool to watch her put that together. Mm-hmm. Like the attention to detail.
Her piping. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Not only does she have to like copy the architecture and the floor plans down to a T, she's also has to aesthetically do this with cookie and baking materials.
I know. What? I think she just did the outside. I don't know. I don't think she didn't put the floors in, but yeah.
She might have put lighting. I think she might have lit up certain rooms and stuff, but wow.
And she got to do it I think she baked the pieces at her place and then transported them, and then she got her own room at the Winchester to put it together. Yeah. So cool.
What a dream to be able to do something like that for
she's awesome.
A place so cool as that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to some of the tools, right, that a spiritualist would use. We're going to talk about the invention of the Ouija board. This was invented in 1890 by Charles Kennard and his partners, including attorney Elijah Bond, who patented the commercially produced version in 1891. The name Ouija, or Ouija, Ouija, was supposedly derived from the board itself, with a medium claiming that the name meant good luck, although some sources say it may have been inspired by a locket. Entrepreneur William Fuld later took over the company and popularized the board worldwide. One of the first mentions of the automatic writing method used in the Ouija board is found in China around 1100 AD in historical documents of the Song dynasty. The method was known as Fuji, or planchette writing. The use of the planchette writing as an ostensible means of necromancy and communion with the spirit world continued, and albeit under special rituals and supervisions, was a central practice of the Quanzhen school until it was forbidden by the Qing dynasty. So automatic writing started in China. I did not know that.
I didn't know
very
that.
Interesting information. As part of the spiritualist movement, mediums began to employ various means for communication with the dead. Following the American Civil War in the United States, mediums did significant business in allegedly allowing survivors to contact lost relatives. Use of talking boards was so common by 1886 that news reported the phenomenon taking over the spiritualist camps in Ohio. The Ouija was named in 1890 in Baltimore, Maryland by medium and spiritualist Helen Peters Nosworthy. Charles Kennard, the founder of Kennard Novelty Companies, claims to have invented the board with his business partner Elijah Bond, who patented it with help from his sister-in-law, spiritualist and medium Helen Peters Nosworthy. The local patent office at first refused the patent. Bond and Nosworthy then traveled to Washington, D.C., where they were also denied a patent until the chief patent officer asked the board to spell out his name, which it did.
Whoa.
Isn't that wild?
Whoa.
In 1901, an employee of Bond, William Fuld, took over the talking board production under the name Ouija, or Ouija. And Aleister Crowley actually had great admiration for the use of the Ouija board. It played a passing role in his magical workings.
He had his hand in everything.
He really
I feel
did.
like who wouldn't be interested in a Ouija board? Your Aunt Fifi. Probably not.
Yeah, she would throw mine out the window over the fence. She didn't even care that it wasn't mine, right? She just wanted the damn thing out of the house. And you want to know the funny thing, the funny like full circle moment when me and Avi when we were planning our wedding, she does a lot of like card work, like she puts together greeting cards and like invitations. She actually helped us put together our wedding invitations, which included an RSVP card of a Ouija board. Our like guests had to circle yes or no.
You got her back.
We got her back, and you know she was so funny about it. She just was like dying the entire time. She's like, I can't believe you're making me do this, Jess. And I'm like, well, I'm getting you
like
back.
She's in better spirits about it. No pun intended.
She is. I mean, yeah. Now we kind of like use it as like a joke, but
funny now.
Yeah. It is funny now because, like, you know, that was a long time ago. So it's all water under the bridge.
I wanted to touch back on, I found a little bit about that experiment about the soul having weight. And it was called the 21 grams experiment.
Okay.
And this study was published in 1907 by Duncan McDougall, a physician from Haverhill, Massachusetts. So McDougall hypothesized that souls have a physical weight and attempted to measure the mass loss by a human when the soul departed the body. McDougall attempted to measure the mass change of 6 patients at the moment of death. One of the 6 subjects lost 3/4 of an ounce. This is 21.3 grams. McDougall stated his experiment would have to be repeated many times before any conclusion could be obtained. The experiment is widely regarded as flawed and unscientific due to the small sample size, as well as the fact that only one of the 6 patients met the hypothesis. So the case has been cited as an example of selective reporting. Despite its rejection within the scientific community, McDougall's experiment popularized the concept that the soul has weight, specifically that it weighs 21 grams. So these 6 patients whose deaths were imminent, 4 were suffering from tuberculosis, 1 from diabetes, and 1 from an unspecified cause. McDougall specifically chose people who were suffering from conditions that cause physical exhaustion, as he needed the patient to remain still when they died to measure them accurately. When the patient looked like they were close to death, their entire bed was placed on an industrial-sized scale that was sensitive within 0.2 of an ounce, or 5.6 grams. On the belief that humans have souls and that animals do not. McDougall later measured the changes in weight of 15 dogs after death. McDougall said he wished to use dogs that were sick or dying from his experiment, though was unable to find any. It is therefore presumed he poisoned healthy dogs.
Oh my God.
Right?
Just for the sake of this experiment?
I guess so. So one of these patients lost weight, but then put the weight back on, and 2 of the patients registered a loss in weight at death, but a few minutes later lost even more weight. One of the patients lost 3/4 of an ounce, which is that 21.3 grams in weight, coinciding with the time of death. McDougall disregarded the results of another patient on the grounds the scales were, quote, not finely adjusted, and discounted the results of another as the patient died while the experiment was still being calibrated. McDougall said that none of the dogs lost any weight after death. While McDougall believed that the results of his experiment showed that a human soul might have weight, his report, which was not published until 1907, stated the experiment would have to be repeated many times before the conclusion could be obtained. So maybe it does, probably doesn't. Is the soul even a thing, you know?
Right, yeah. That is fascinating though, to think that your soul would carry some weight, because
right. Maybe
being a human, living the human experience inside a physical body, and if you're on your deathbed and you're carrying sickness, and like there's probably so much spiritual weight tacked on that when your spirit is finally able to fly free, I'm sure that would provide some kind of release to the physical body, even for a few seconds, because it said some of these put weight on a few moments later, but that could just be bloat after death. I don't know.
It could also be tied to like how you lived your life. Were you a good person? Do you have all that weight on your soul? Or were you, a bad person with lots of guilt in the end?
Yeah, no, totally. So moving on to spirit art and photography, which we have talked about pretty much, like we've talked about that a lot already on this podcast. Again, go guys, check out our daguerreotypes episode. I forget what episode it was that we also talked about recently. What's her name? Georgiana Houghton, that spiritualist that did the art. Oh, I think it was our color theory episode.
Okay.
She was a medium that would do the drawings we're going to talk about her in a little bit, just refresh everybody's memory.
Yeah.
So in 1859, a debate ran through several issues of the Spiritual Telegraph and Fireside Preacher about the possibility of spirits being captured in a photograph. After photographing a newly deceased man, which was a common practice then, the female photographer discovered two other figures, a man and a woman, posed behind the corpse. Soon after that, a photographer or daguerreotypist wrote to the paper explaining that he had created such images by accident. The photographic plates then in use had to be cleaned after each image had been taken and printed, and if the cleaning was imperfect, ghostly remnants might appear on the next print obtained from that plate. The paper contacted the photographer, who noted that the plate used for that photograph had been brand new and that the dress of the woman caught in the image was long out of date. However, she also noted that none of the deceased man's family recognized either of the spirits seen in the image. Despite a few early incidences of spirit photography, such as the one described above, it wasn't until 1862 that an amateur photographer named William Mumler attempted a self-portrait, only to discover that he was not alone in the final photograph. The camera had captured the ghostly apparition of a woman seated in a chair. Photography was still a relatively new art. Samuel Morse had taken the first portrait photograph just 22 years earlier, and Mumler, an engraver by profession, was the first to admit that he might have made a mistake in processing the plate. He did assert that the female specter in the photo was his cousin, who had passed away 12 years before. Mumler soon discovered that his photographs regularly revealed spirits. Other photographers paid visits to him, certain that they could ferret out his secrets. Mumler invited them to witness all parts of the procedure, from setting up the studio to developing the plate, and they all left baffled. When Mumler wed Hannah Stewart, a war widow who owned the studio he'd been using and who was also a medium, he began to produce spirit photographs as a business. At the beginning, Mumler warned clients that the spirits didn't always materialize, but within a few years, he was offering to sell photographs of deceased spirits via mail order. A photograph of a dead loved one's spirit could be had for $7.50. I'm not sure how much that is in today's money.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unfortunately for Mumler, purchasers of his photographs began to recognize some of the, quote, spirits as persons still living.
Uh-oh.
All of whom had had their photographs taken at Mrs. Stewart's studio. Mumler was discredited, even by the same spiritualist newspapers that had earlier supported him. So they found him out, okay? So we've also already talked about the daguerreotypes on this podcast, as well as that, who I was just talking about before, British artist Georgiana Houghton, who actually developed skills as a medium after attending her first séance in 1859 and achieved her first mediumistic drawings in 1861. For the next decade, under the guidance of a spirit called Lenny, followed by master painters and 70 archangels, okay, she produced over 155 extraordinary watercolor spirit drawings. And she also has two books out, one called Evenings at Home and Spiritual Seance, where she kind of chronicles her seances, and then another called Chronicles of the Photographs of Human Beings.
I remember her now. Yes.
Yeah. So she's worth checking out. And then there's ectoplasm. I'm sure we've all heard that word floating around if you've seen Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah.
This is known as simply as a substance or spiritual energy kind of exteriorized by physical mediums. Fortunes of spirit photography, which had given up on producing misty images of dead relatives, kind of transformed in the 20th century into another method of recording mediums during this thing called ectoplasm. This term was coined in 1894 by psychical researcher Charles Richet, or Richet. Although the term is widespread in popular culture, there's no scientific evidence that ectoplasm exists, and many purported examples were exposed as hoaxes fashioned from cheesecloth, gauze, or other natural substances. Look at these pictures, okay?
They're nightmare fuel.
Yeah, so we have like this like string of gauze or whatever tied to this one person's nose and going to like this like obviously fake spirit
with a dummy face, like a very spooky looking creep face. Yeah, and the person seated is blindfolded. Yeah, and then they have that the cheesecloth tied around their face, their like near their nose, and up to the spirit, the spectral spooky.
Right. Yeah, this specific photo, this is titled Phantoms, and this was photographed during a, what does that say? I can't see that
Seance?
small.
A seance with Mrs. Duncan at her
seance.
home.
Yeah.
Note the mask-like faces.
Coat hanger shoulders and warped and weft of material. Yeah, very strange. But this is like the thing that like Victorians believed in, or, you know, they were trying to pass this off as like fact or like real. Like, this is really happening. That's not cheesecloth. It's ectoplasm. And they just gave it a name.
Yeah.
Right. There's a whole section in this book on ectoplasm. I just like basically just put that little blurb so you could get an idea of what it is.
Sure.
But if you guys want to go down the rabbit hole, there's a whole section of it in this book. So now let's talk about the skeptics, the charlatans, and the true believers. Morton documents both the faith and the fraud that accompanied this new wave of communication with the dead. Notable skeptics like Harry Houdini expose fraudulent mediums who use trickery to imitate ghostly effects. He and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle were great friends, but had actually had a falling out over whether or not this mediumship was real. There's a whole backstory to this. It's very long. We don't have to get into it now. But also, remember when we talked about that fairy photograph? Those two little girls that were trying to pass off those like paper cutouts as real fairies, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was like, yeah, it's real. And Harry Houdini was like, that's
You're
bullshit.
an idiot.
That's obviously fake. Like, these two they started off as friends, and they ended their friendship over whether this was fact or fiction. So it was so of the times, right? Like, this was just like such a new, not technology, this is a new concept that I guess was just a heavy debate at that time.
Drove wedges between all sorts of folks.
Really, really did. And yet others, including scientists and philosophers, genuinely believe that they were recording evidence of spirit life. The spiritualism's greatest paradox is that it simultaneously comforted the grieving, but it also opened the door to exploitation. Like, how much can you comfort a grieving person until it's gone too far and they've given you their entire life savings just because they really want to get in contact with that person they love so much that's crossed over? Like, at what point does it go too far, you know? Yeah. And I think that's what Harry Houdini was kind of trying to like put the kibosh on. Like, he felt bad for these people who were being taken advantage of, and that's why he was trying to put a stop to it, because he was a staged magician guy. He was smoke and mirrors guy. So he knew how to pull one over on people. So he saw right through all the bullshit. Right? So he was like, if anybody's gonna, dispel or perpetuate all of this, it's dispel it. It's gonna be me. Like, why are we perpetuating things that are
taking
obviously
advantage of these people?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was kind of his, I guess, life's purpose after becoming this famous stage magician, is just protecting the vulnerable people from being, taken advantage of during this boom of this new era. This era produced new terminology, right? We just talked about the ectoplasm, then there was the psychical research, spirit photography, and this was all an attempt to rationalize this mystery. Every generation's necromancy reveals its anxieties. The Victorians feared deception as much as they feared death, right? So it was just like they both were just like fueling the fire. They were just like fueling each other.
Yeah.
So it kind of like kept it going, right?
Yeah.
So now going into the 20th century and beyond, there's some new instruments for old questions. Morton closes her history by tracing necromancy's evolution into the modern age, where technology and psychology replaced ritual. Spirit photography evolved into electronic voice phenomena. Like, now we have EVPs and radio experiments designed to capture these ghostly images. We have phone apps that literally show you if a person's sitting in the chair next to you, like the stick figure. Did you see that app?
And the Tesla feature where it shows like where people are walking.
That's wild. That's so crazy. Yeah. I've seen like people driving through like wooded areas. Obviously there's nobody around them. And then on their like radar, it shows like a whole bunch of like people walking around the car. And it's like, clearly, what the fuck? There's obviously must be ghosts.
Must be ghosts.
And then psychologists like Carl Jung reframed ghosts as manifestations of the unconscious, echoes of the human psyche rather than literal spirits. And then in the digital era, grief technology has emerged, like AI memorial chatbots and virtual séances that simulate communication with lost loved ones. And I mean, that could be dangerous. There is there is such thing as is it AI psychosis or
Yeah.
something like that? Like there, who knows what the truth, but there's an era of mystery to all of this still, and nobody knows the truth. So
Right.
proceed with caution. And Morton observes that even in secular times, our tools still mirror the same desire to keep love and memory alive beyond physical death, right? We all want to connect with those ones that we miss so dearly that have already passed on to the other side. So necromancy, it's just evolves over time. It adapts with each century, from candles to cables, from invocation to algorithm. The conversation with the dead never truly ends, and I don't think it ever will. Because as humans who are living this human physical body-bound experience, like we all want to know, like, what's next?
I want to know. I know that's so scary to not know.
The mystery that keeps perpetuating this. So, but I don't think it'll ever go away.
And with the more modern stuff, we have people like Sylvia Brown, who wrote all those books, Long Island Medium.
Teresa Caputo!
I really liked her show.
I love her.
Know, the medium to the celebrities and so many on TikTok doing their thing. You know?
Yep, exactly. So moving more into the modern era, today's day and age, right? In present day, necromancy is more generally used as a term to describe manipulation of death and the dead, or the pretense thereof, often facilitated through the use of ritual magic or some kind of occult ceremony, like how we see in movies and films, how it's portrayed like, you know, the Solomon circle and standing in the center of a pinnacle with, you know, your arms raised to the heavens and with skulls and all that shit. Contemporary seances, channeling, and spiritualism verge on necromancy when supposedly invoked spirits are asked to reveal future events or secret information. Necromancy may also be presented as sciomancy, a branch of theurgic magic. I'm not really sure what
Never heard of that before.
Is. Right. As to the practice of necromancy having endured in one form or another throughout the millennia, an encyclopedia of occultism states the following. The art is of almost universal usage. Considerable difference of opinion exists among modern adepts as to the exact methods to be properly pursued in the necromantic art, and it must be borne in mind that necromancy, which in the Middle Ages was called sorcery, shades into modern spiritualistic practice. There is no doubt, however, that necromancy is the touchstone of occultism, for if, after careful preparation, the adept can carry through to a successful issue, the raising of the soul from the other world, he has proved the value of his art.
This is where I first heard the word necromancy, was through Lord of the Rings, because in contemporary pop culture, the archvillain in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings fantasy, Sauron, first appears in the environs of Middle-earth as the necromancer of Dol Guldur in Tolkien's standalone prologue to the trilogy of The Hobbit. In fictional settings such as Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy video games, necromancy is associated with the reanimation of corpses, often meant to be used as weapons. This tradition appears to combine... Okay, wait a minute, going back to Jason and the Argonauts.
Oh,
When the guy like throws the bones and he necromances the skeletons out and they're chasing Jason.
That was always my favorite scene as a kid. Like, I would always watch that movie with my dad and I'll be like, when's the skeleton scene? I want to see the skeletons fighting.
It's pretty amazing for like CGI or whatever film back then to
that wasn't CGI. That was actually that was clay animation, right? Stop animation.
Stop motion, yeah, but like for the time,
right?
Amazing. Special effects, I guess, is the word I wanted to use.
I've seen Tim Burton, who is like, you know, one of the big, well, early on in his career, not so much now, but one of the big clay animators of our generation, right?
Yeah.
And he would always reference, I forget the guy's name who did that animation on Jason and the Argonauts, but I would always see Tim Burton in interviews reference that scene in that movie. That was like his like inspiration as a kid to want to do that.
It's so impressive.
Yeah.
We should watch that movie together sometime.
Jason and the Argonauts? I haven't seen it in forever, but that would be fun.
So this tradition appears to combine associations of conjuring the dead from European and Mediterranean traditions with elements involving zombies that seem to derive from Caribbean folklore and practice. Necromancy is a form of magic in the Skullduggery Pleasant series by Irish author Derek Landy. This form of magic is mostly concerned with the manipulation of shadow, darkness, and life energy. In the series, the most famous necromancer is Lord Vile. The protagonist, Valkyrie Kane, deals with the allure of this form of magic and its consequences for much of her adult life. Never heard of that before. Very cool.
Yeah, same. One scene, now we're gonna get into some like movies and TV. Because like these scenes are so these are a dime a dozen, right? Seance scenes in
Yes.
you know, like more spooky TV movies. This is from Penny Dreadful. I don't know if you've ever watched that show, but if you're into the Victorian era and you're into like spooky yuki shit, this is the show you want to watch. Okay? So in the introduction of this book, Calling the Spirits History of Seances by Lisa Morton, the book that we've been talking about this whole episode, the very first the page, the introduction of this entire book opens with this, okay? A group of London's 19th century elite gather in an ornate drawing room to participate in a seance. The medium, Madame Kali, directs the guests to be seated around a large glass top table and to place their hands all touching on the tabletop. The gas in the room is turned down as the medium asks them to join her in suspending disbelief and to, quote, imagine your minds floating in the darkness of time. She summons the dead and abruptly convulses. When she speaks again, her voice is altered, deeper and heavily accented. Soon, mayhem erupts as spirits possess a woman in the circle, who reenacts the excruciating death of another sitter's daughter. Gusts of wind blow out the remaining candles, doors slam, the glass tabletop shatters, and the possessed woman is wrenched into impossible positions as the other guests scream in horror. This scene from the second episode of the television series Penny Dreadful epitomizes what many of us might think when we're asked to imagine a seance. Or we might perhaps imagine that moment at a Halloween party when someone pulls out a Ouija board, places the planchette on the lettered surface, and watched it glide beneath the fingers positioned atop it. So the common perception of a seance has been indelibly shaped by decades of pop culture with these kinds of very scenes that we see, like Penny Dreadful and all the other ones that I have listed here. Archive 81, that movie, that's show that I was just telling you, me and Avi are watching right now, slasher about Jack the Ripper. This guy, you see that thumbnail? That guy could be Billy Zane's brother. Okay, they could have casted Billy Zane as this part, and it would have worked great. By the way, Billy Zane has a movie on Netflix right now.
Oh my God.
It looks spooky. Billy Zane Netflix movie.
I see he's getting lots of accolades for playing Marlon Brando. He looks a lot like him.
He is, but I feel like this new movie that he's in is being so overlooked. I haven't seen them talking about, or him like even posting about this on his social media. But there's a movie on Netflix right now called The Devil on Campus. And it's the Larry Ray story. Yeah, it's a crime drama, apparently. Yeah, I don't know if it's a supernatural story at all. I think it's a crime. Yeah, it says true crime drama. But if you look at the thumbnail on this,
this guy looks like him.
I'll pop the link in the chat over here. But look how sinister Billy looks in that thumbnail.
Billy, you serving,
right?
You serving the creep.
Serving Satan in that photo.
He is.
So yeah, that's on my to watch list. So definitely want to check that out. And then some other movies or shows on my list here. I said Archive 81, The Others with Nicole Kidman.
That's what I think of as like a medium seance with this old lady. She's so scary.
Yeah, she really is. And then if we want to go a little more campy with it, we have that seance scene from Beetlejuice when they resurrect Barbara and Adam in their wedding outfits at the end.
Yeah.
So there's so many, like there's more than we know in pop culture that are just like floating around. The seance scene, I think, is like a big trope. And I think that's just like our human experience. We're just fascinated with death and the great beyond. And like, you know, is it possible to resurrect or commune with the other side? Right.
Agreed.
Now that we talked about all of that pop culture fun, what are some methods if we wanted to try this on our own, like some methods of communing with the dead? So here are some ways that we can communicate with spirits that include using tools like the Ouija board or a spirit box, or even holding a seance, or engaging in other methods such as prayer, meditation, paying attention to dreams and other intuitive signs, preparing your space, approaching the practice with calm and respectful attitude, cleansing yourself. These are all ways that you can, commonly do these practices. So getting into some of these tools, obviously we just talked about the Ouija board, basically a board with an alphabet and numbers and words like yes and no and hello and goodbye, and a planchette that is a pointer basically used to spell out messages. And then you can use a spirit box, an electronic device that rapidly scans radio frequencies, allowing spirits to communicate through snippets of audio and static. I think that is like my least favorite sound ever. Like,
oh my God, that's so just my brain all the time.
Right, exactly. It's so creepy. And anybody... Yeah, tiger. Like, what?
Yeah,
like,
what?
Random word. Cat. I don't know. But that's like anybody who's experienced clairaudience, they don't even need a spirit box because it basically sounds like that in your brain. Like,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes when I'm going to sleep at night, that's when it activates, and I'll have that static, and then I'll get like snippets of words coming in, and it never makes sense.
I
It's
know.
always what the fuck?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? So then you have tarot cards, pendulums, crystal balls. And now here are some, I guess, more direct and intuitive methods, like hosting a séance, which is that group gathering where people sit together and try to communicate with spirits. There's a meditation and a quiet space. Creating a quiet, comfortable space and quieting your mind through meditation can help you connect with spirits. And then dreams and intuition, obviously paying attention to vivid dreams, intuitive feelings, symbols, or unexpected coincidences. Prayer, a practice of communicating with a higher spiritual power. And then mental mediumship, a method where a medium uses psychic abilities like clairaudience, we were just talking about, like hearing, or clairvoyance, seeing, or clairsentience, feeling, to receive messages. And some people even have the claircognizance, just like a definite knowing of something. So have you ever been to a seance? Have you ever done a seance?
I've done table tipping.
Okay.
Is that the same thing? Probably not. Well, yeah. No.
I don't know. No?
I don't think so.
I told you my mom's cousin just told me, like, my aunt, I think she said my Aunt Lucy, my grandfather's sister, she had like a instance, like at a family gathering, she was just like, hey guys, check out my party trick, and just made a table levitate, apparently.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And I'm like, Mom, you never told me this?
Whoa.
Or maybe she did, I just wasn't
Check
listening.
this out. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's so funny.
So apparently there's been I guess instances of my family
Yes.
ancestors doing this shit, which is
Yeah.
wild to me.
Wow.
But me and Avi went to this seance in Salem, and it probably was bullshit. It was all stage magic, right? He, like, the guy that did the show, he was a magician, and he did the whole first, like, half of the show was, like, stage magic, okay? But then the second half of the show, we went downstairs. It was like this, like, I don't know, like a VFW, the basement of a church. It was so fucking creepy. Mind you, in Salem, in October, at like midnight. It was like a midnight showing. So like, it was just like the group of people that was there, and everything else just felt like really dead and silent and creepy. And the whole premise of the seance was that we were trying to connect. The show was called the 27 Club. So we were trying to connect with like rock stars and like famous people who pass on when they're like 27 years old at their prime. So I think we were like trying to connect with like Kurt Cobain, like Amy Winehouse, and Janis Joplin. And then he was trying to connect with the spirit of Jim Morrison. And there was a fucking like whiskey or like Jack Daniels bottle over on the like one of the tables on the side, and there were chains that were rattling.
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow.
come on.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe it was like a group of like 10, 15 of us sitting in like this huge table. The lights it's like dark. I think there were only like red like exit sign lights and stuff. And like we all had our like hands on the table, and like all that stuff started happening, and I'm like freaking the fuck out. I'm like, this is really fucking creepy. I'm scared, but this is also really cool. But this is also probably fake.
Yeah.
This is also probably fake as shit. But I mean, it was fun nonetheless. And it was, hey, listen, if anything else, it's great entertainment value, right?
Absolutely. I like that stuff. I like being a little spooked.
Yeah.
We went to my brother's rehearsal dinner, and it was at this old like speakeasy place in Harrisburg, and this building is noted to be haunted. So we're having a nice night, and it was like winding down. There was a cup like on the table, and I'm looking right at the cup. And do you know how sometimes like condensation can get under a cup and it will move? There was no condensation.
Like,
this
just
glass
slid across the table.
It slid and broke. It fell off the table. And there were like two other people. So I was like, you saw that too, right? They were like, yep. And then staff was like, it happens all the time. I was like, what? That's a lot of glassware to go through. So that's the very visual, like something very visual that you made me remember. So thanks for that. Yeah.
They must have a hobgoblin.
They must have a hobgoblin.
Midst, right?
Not our hobgoblin, though.
Not our hobgoblin, no. But that was also fascinating when we went to the Wayside Inn, and like, you know, learning about some of the hauntings there and stuff.
I love that. I love spooky stories.
It would be cool to go to a place with like that's knowingly like haunted
Yeah.
and doing some kind of like seance there.
I want to do like a haunted place, but not like a murder house.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
where there's like dark energy.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I don't like that either.
I
No.
would love to go to the Winchester.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Who wouldn't want to go into Sarah Winchester's seance
Seance.
room,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
also agree though, like you'd expect a seance room to be a little more, I don't know, Victorian
Elaborate.
like that. Yeah, like
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't
Maybe
know,
she
but
didn't want
maybe they took
distractions.
yeah. Wait, did it say that it never had a table in it at all? Like it was
It
always
didn't
just
say. I don't remember from the tour
okay.
either. It probably
Yeah.
had a table or a chair for her to sit in, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
I want to watch that movie again now. Yeah, I'm probably gonna go put it on later and get
Yeah.
cozy and spooky.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's talk about how we can, I guess, host our own spooky evening, whether it's a seance or a dumb supper. If you've ever heard this term, a dumb supper is a silent meal traditionally held to honor the dead or in a separate historical context for a love divination. As a ritual for honoring ancestors, a place is set for spirits, and the living eat in solemn silence, okay? Nobody talking, just eating in the quiet, okay? In the love divination tradition, young women would prepare the meal in silence, sometimes with unusual rules like backward setting in the hope of seeing a vision of their future husband. But for the most part, I've usually heard of a dumb supper in correspondence with like trying to connect with
Yeah.
dead and your ancestors, right?
Yeah.
So the purpose of this is to commune with the ancestors and spirits by creating a sacred silent space. The silence is meant to allow for grief and create a spiritual, quote, portal for spirits to visit. The meal is often held around the end of October or early November when the veil is at its thinnest, especially if you want to do it Samhain or I think November 1st, right? Or 2nd is All Saints Day would
Mhm.
also be a good time to do it. A sacred space is created by casting a circle or using other methods or simply turning off all electronics. Well, I don't know. Adding, like, leaving on your electronics might be like, I don't know, throw it a curveball because ghosts are known to communicate a lot through electronics. So,
Put on some like old school music that your
mhm,
ancestors might like. Make a
right.
ancestor playlist for every decade.
Right. And then, yes, so silence, it does say silence is key though. So I don't know if like maybe very low in the background.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But it does say no one is to speak or use phones, right? No distractions because this is like a place of reverence for your loved ones to come and visit, right? So you want to set an extra place though. So you have a place for you, for your food, and then you also have a place next to you for this whatever spirit you want to commune with. And the food here, this meal can be served in reverse order. People typically start with the dessert to allow the spirits to eat first, and then you work your way backwards toward the first course. So after the meal, food is often, like, I guess whatever food, obviously the plate that the spirits, quote, eat from. This can be repurposed or left as an offering for the spirits or even your wildlife outside. And some menu ideas for this are seasonal and also symbolic dishes like very fall, autumnal, like pumpkin soup or breads, baked squash, apple dishes such as pancakes or recipes with apples. As we said before, apples are the fruit of the underworld and the dead. Also stewed greens. Then we have sweets like soul cakes, which is a traditional Samhain recipe. Soul cakes are small, round, spiced cakes traditionally made for All Hallowtide, Halloween, All Saints Day, All Souls Day in Britain and Ireland, where it was traditionally, I guess that's where it originated. Historically, poor people and children would go, quote, souling, which was going door to door to receive these cakes in exchange for promising to pray for the souls of the giver's deceased relatives.
Like trick or treat.
Yeah, the practice of souling is considered the origin of modern day trick-or-treating.
There it is.
And the purpose was that each cake eaten was traditionally believed to free a soul from purgatory. And they were a form of alms or charity to commemorate the dead. And then also the costumes were incorporated as a way to scare away those evil entities, right? Or to put yourself in disguise so the evil entities didn't know it was you and they wouldn't haunt you. So I guess you would want to prepare ancestral favorites. Those menu ideas were just some ideas, but you can prepare dishes that were liked by whatever ancestors that you're honoring. Also going back to spirits like liquor, putting out your ancestors' favorite drink or beverage or libation is another good way to honor them. And then set the mood, right? You want to create that silent atmosphere. The meal is traditionally eaten in silence to allow for a respectful and heightened sense of connection with the spirits. Then you want to use candlelight. Light the room with candles, and you can use black candles if possible to create that mystical and eerie atmosphere. And then your table setting, you want to use a black tablecloth, use black plates and cutlery. You can also use a combination of black and white dishes as long as black is the predominant color. As I think in the Victorian era, that's the color of mourning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to set plates for your spirits, prepare 2 plates, one larger one for yourself and a smaller one for your ancestor, and maybe a libation or 2. And then you actually did a Dumb Supper Book of Shadows page, right? Which I
sure
think we
did.
talked about on this podcast before.
Did we?
I think
maybe for I don't know. I will share it again.
Yeah,
I'll put
share
it
it
on the
again.
Patreon as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have, yes, a Dumb Supper page. Kind of goes over everything Justina just said, but I have a Dumb Supper blessing you can include.
Beautiful.
And this goes, the veil is thin at this time of our year. Remember those who you hold dear. Set a place at your table tonight. Welcome them in. Let the celebration begin. Honor and respect their presence tonight. Rejoice and give thanks to all that they taught you. Guide you and protect you. This is the time to not be sad. They have never left you, for they are always there. Embrace this moment, for it is to share. Eat your supper knowing they are there. Raise your chalice to all that have passed. Hail to all your knowledge, that is my path. And then, I don't know, you probably have, Justina. Have you read The Witches of New York?
No.
That one has like step by step how to like host a dumb supper.
Really?
Well, I just took it from there and I simplified it. So there are 11 very short little steps. Okay, so step 1, preparation. So this is directly from the book. Preparations shall be carried out in an orderly fashion. Ingredients for dishes gathered, linen set aside, serving utensils and dishes cleaned, candles anointed, the room blessed. Instructions shall be made clear to all participants. Step 2, to the table shall be set backwards, forks on the right, knife and spoon on the left, and so on. Step 3, a place must be set and a candle lit for each spirit you wish to contact. Chairs meant for visiting spirits shall be shrouded in black. Personal items or tokens may also be included so the spirits feel welcome and at home. Step 4. All dishes served are meant to honor the dead as well as feed the living, so choose the menu wisely with consideration for the spirits' preferences and appetites. Step 5. The meal itself is to be served backward, like you said. Tea and sweets first, wine or spirits last. 6. A scrying mirror may be set before the place of each spirit. 7. Each participant may choose to bring an offering or a message to the deceased for the dinner. 8. A participant shall enter the room facing backwards, oldest to youngest. 9. A bell shall be rung to begin the rite and then again to end it. 10. Once the rite begins, the living must remain silent until the rite has ended. 11. The rite shall begin at midnight. I was like,
Wow.
ooh, that's so spooky.
You know, I would love to do something like that. But you know, you have your muggle friends and they don't know how to shut the fuck up or take anything seriously.
I know.
You know, I would love to host a dumb supper, evening, like
in a serious manner.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. And like, you know, it's not really a séance, so it's like, it's not a séance, so I think it's still got the spooky factor, but without like the scariness of like, oh my god, what if somebody gets possessed, or, you know, I open a portal of something.
Right, we're just having a meal.
We're just having a meal and we're honoring the dead and
shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up. And, you know, I think it could be such a beautiful but spooky thing. I want to do one of these so bad.
I want to do it too. I know.
Yeah,
it would be
really cool.
Interesting if we could host a virtual dumb supper. You know, everybody just gather. Everybody be quiet.
That would be very cool. Yeah. Yeah, so there you go, guys. If you guys want to try that out, let us know if you have ever done a dumb supper. We'd love to hear your stories about it. We have one more episode coming up as our season finale before we take our break, and I think the next episode is gonna have some spooky ooky stuff in it because it's getting closer to the thinning of the veil on Samhain, right?
Yes.
So if you guys do have any of those instances, please slide into our DMs and give us those ASAP, because if you want to get them in by our series finale.
Yeah, I want to know about your Samhain traditions too, you know, because sometimes like I'm feeling stuck, also overwhelmed, like analysis paralysis. Just doing these episodes gets you into spooky season. You're like, wow, there's so much I can do. What do I want to do? So, you know, all the unique traditions that our listeners have, I want to hear about too.
Yeah, we would love to include those in our our finale, I said series finale, season finale. We're not
going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere. Yeah, so we will be back in January after next week's season
Wrap-up.
finale wrap up. And yeah, we can't wait to get spooky with it. So give us those stories.
Na 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 na.
So if you guys want some further reading about, séances and spiritualism and that whole movement and all the spooky ookies, here's some further reading for you guys. You guys can check out any of these books on Amazon. The first one is this one that we talked about today, Calling the Spirits, A History of Seances by Lisa Morton. This book, I'm telling you, it's jam-packed with stuff like I wish we could have talked about today, but like we don't have all the time. So maybe we'll revisit Necromancy next year again and talk about more of this, because I could talk about this shit forever.
Yeah.
The next book on this list is Spirits, Seers, and Seances, Victorian Spiritualism, Magic, and the Supernatural by Steele Alexandra Doris. Then we have Talking to the Dead, Kate and Maggie Fox and the Rise of Spiritualism by Barbara Weisberg. And I think that's more, I guess, of maybe more of the entire story about the Fox sisters and their whole movement and the boom that surrounded them. Then we have Spiritualism's Place, Reformers, Seekers, and Seances in Lily Dale by Avril Earls, Sarah Hanley Cousins, Marissa C. Rhodes, and Elizabeth Garner Masaryk. And then there's When We Spoke to the Dead, How Ghosts Gave American Women Their Voice by Elise S. Carter. And then there's The Book of Seances, A Guide Divination to Talking to Spirits by Claire Goodchild. There's a book called The Witch of Lime Street, Seance Seduction, and Houdini in the Spirit World by David Jare. And then there's Beyond the Veil, The Victorian Obsession with Death and Mourning by Paul Gambino. Then there's Through a Glass, Darkly, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and the Quest to Solve the Greatest Mystery of All by Stefan Betchel and Lawrence Royce Staines. And then lastly, there's Solitary Seance, How You Can Talk to Spirits on Your Own by Raymond Buckland. And that's just a handful of books. I have not read any of these other ones. The only one that I have is this one by Lisa Morton. But I think all of these look really cool and kind of touch on all the little aspects that we touched on today. Like probably more of a deep dive if you get any one of these books, if you want to go down any of these rabbit holes. Fascinating shit.
I wanted to also include, it's called Whisper by J.H. Brennan, The Secret History of the Spirit World. This one was freaking cool, and it talked about all of the instances throughout history, whether it was like Alexander the Great, Hitler, all of the instances in which history changed due to possible spirit contact. Let's see.
That's fascinating.
This says, an eye-opening history. There's a wealth of evidence to suggest that such whisperings are not only possible, but they have occurred again and again, subtly directing the course of human events. In Whispers, best-selling novelist and expert on occult J.H. Brennan explores how the spirit world, whether he believes it or not, has influenced our own since the dawn of civilization. Brennan details the supernatural affiliates of world leaders such as King Nebuchadnezzar to Adolf Hitler, showing how the decisions and policies of each have been shaped by their supernatural beliefs and encounters. Brennan also examples the impact of visions from the shamanisms in native cultures to prophets such as Joan of Arc, chronicling millennia of contact between the spirit world and our own. I just thought it was a fascinating book, so I will include the link in our notes.
Please do. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to check all of these books out. Like, I wish I had more time to just fucking sit and read. Like,
I agree. Yeah.
And like, I got this last Christmas, and then when we put together our calendar and we decided that we were going to do a necromancy episode, which I think was like in the beginning of the summer, I started taking notes from the book, and then ultimately, like, we just like, we're always taking notes for other episodes, and it just kind of got pushed to the back burner. I wish I could have sat down and actually read this amidst all of our other research that we were doing for all the other episodes. There's not enough time in the day.
There's
Maybe
really
I'll
not.
be able to read it when we take our break, like actually read it. But
I love audiobooks for that reason. I'm like, I need
Look
to
at the
blaze
cover of
through
this too.
I know, it's so neat.
I love that. Very spooky. In conclusion, across centuries, we've called into the dark, from the caves of ancient necromancers to the candlelit parlors of the Victorians, always hoping someone might answer. Whether through sacred ritual, stage illusion, or a whisper at the seance table, necromancy has never been about raising the dead so much as refusing to let love die, right? And that the truth isn't with practical magic as well, right? Our beloved Owens, they just don't want to let their loved ones go. And that's normal for, I guess, humans. We just want to connect. And the Fox sisters gave it a voice. The Davenport brothers gave it spectacle. And Daniel Douglas Home like Vincent Owens, gave it strange, haunting beauty. Behind every wrapping and flicker of light lies the same desire, to prove that love endures beyond the grave. The veil between worlds may separate us, but it's thinner than we think. Every whispered name, every song for the departed, every act of remembrance is its own kind of resurrection. It's a quiet calling of the spirits. Yeah.
I need to get my Samhain altar together today.
Yeah.
I'm still
I'd
on
have-
the button.
Yeah. Well, I added some fall leaves and acorns to it.
Cute.
But the stuff that I have on my altar is still stuff from my summer solstice gathering. I have like
that's okay.
I have like the calendula and like the yellow candles, and it works for fall still. I just added some autumn leaves and stuff.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, maybe I'll add some orange. I don't even know if I have orange candles.
Go for a nature walk. Get some more leaves.
Yo, I don't know where my purse is right now, but there's a Ziploc bag in my purse of just acorns that I collect.
Okay.
I collected
Nice.
at work when I was walking the dog. I was like, oh, these are cute.
I love them. Love that. There's so many little crafts you can do with the acorns. My mom and I were collecting the
know.
little hats while she was here.
I know.
Wanted to make
I
little
saw.
felt things.
Yeah, I saw one where you take the little cap, the little hat from the acorn, and then you sew like a fabric body to it, and then you
Cute.
put the cap on the body, so you have little fabric acorns, but the like hat is real acorn.
That's so cute.
Looks really cute. So I wanna try to do something like that.
If you'd like to help support the show, you can visit us at patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast, where you can vote about what we talk about next. You can see our monthly calendars and even get a shout out on the show. You can grab our show notes, our after hours posts, and curated playlists. You're able to join our private communities over on Facebook and Discord for live streams, watch parties, and other chats. You can unlock bonus videos and bloopers, meditations, old vault footage, spells, and ritual content, plus exclusive demos of our original music. But if Patreon's not your thing, you can still support us for free by rating our show on Spotify or Apple Podcast and leave us a review. Share us on Instagram and check out our merch through the link in our bio. But again, that's patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast.
Don't forget to check out our album over on Bandcamp. Our link is in our show notes, our description, our Instagram. Come say hello to us and send us your spooky stories. Magnolia Street Podcast at gmail.com.
That's right. And we got one more episode coming for you guys next week. And that will be it for season 3 wrap. What?
Wow. Have a celebratory
3.
peanut butter whiskey together.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And,
Unless we're recording at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I know. But it's Samhain, so we're allowed.
That's right.
And yeah, I think that's all for today. We'll see you guys next week, back at it again with another all new episode and final episode of season 3, wrapping it up. And then we'll see you guys in season 4. Crazy.
Until
with that,
then.
I'm Justina.
I'm Christina.
We'll see you next time.
I can't do it like you do. Okay. Diamonds!
Diamonds!
At the house on Magnolia Street, would you go down to Magnolia Street when the wisteria grow wild? At the house of magic and mystery, so would you go down to Magnolia Street?
It's in the water.